In the stillness of a starry night, a radiant light broke through the darkness. This light marked the arrival of a god who would become a beacon of hope, creativity, and wisdom. His name was Apollo, born amidst the waves of the Aegean Sea, on the sacred island of Delos. The air buzzed with anticipation, as whispers of his birth spread among gods and mortals alike. Leto, his mother, felt the weight of the world upon her shoulders. She was a goddess chased relentlessly by the wrath of Hera, Zeus's jealous wife. Leto had endured countless hardships during her pregnancy, hiding from the eyes of Hera, who wished to see her suffer. Driven to despair, Leto wandered through the dark forests and rocky hills, searching for a safe haven to bring forth her child. In her heart, she carried the longing for a place where her children could be born free and unburdened by the shadows of their father's other relationships. As the moon hung high in the sky, casting its silvery glow upon the island of Delos, Leto finally found sanctuary. It was a place of beauty, untouched by cruelty and filled with the songs of nature. The island seemed to sigh in relief as Leto knelt on the soft, warm earth. Her labor pains were fierce, but with each wave of pain came a surge of power. She felt an ancient force coursing through her, a connection to the divine that gave her strength. With a final cry, Apollo emerged into the world, a radiant being glowing with life. The moment he took his first breath, the sun seemed to rise brighter, casting a golden hue over Delos. Flowers bloomed at his feet, and the winds carried his cries across the sea. He was beautiful, with bright golden hair that shone like sunlight and piercing blue eyes that sparkled with intelligence and mischief. The island itself celebrated his birth, its rocks and trees whispering songs of joy. As Apollo lay in Leto's arms, he was not just a child, he was a promise. A promise of light, healing, and the arts. The world felt the warmth of his presence, as if the sun had descended to earth. He would grow to be a god of many talents: music, poetry, healing, and prophecy. Even in his infancy, there was something remarkable about him. He was destined to bring joy and wisdom to both gods and mortals. But his birth was not without complications. The dark clouds of Hera's jealousy loomed on the horizon. Despite being far from her, Hera's wrath was unyielding. She sent a fearsome serpent, Python, to hunt down Leto and her children. As Python slithered through the mountains, it spread fear among the nymphs and creatures of the land, threatening to destroy the new life Leto had brought forth. Yet, Apollo was not just an ordinary child. The moment he took his first steps, he walked with purpose. With an innate sense of justice and bravery, he was ready to protect his mother and himself. Even as a newborn, he radiated strength, and the world sensed it. The sky shimmered with energy as he raised his tiny fists, ready to confront the dangers that lurked in the shadows. It wasn't long before Apollo's divine gifts revealed themselves. When he cried, the sound was melodious, echoing through the valleys like the sweetest song. His laughter danced on the breeze, making even the sternest hearts smile. With every coo and gurgle, he charmed the very nature around him. The flowers seemed to lean in closer, and the birds began to sing more cheerfully. It was as if the universe rejoiced in his presence, a joyous hymn that resonated with life and beauty. As days turned into weeks, Apollo grew rapidly, embodying the very essence of the sun itself. His charm and charisma drew both gods and mortals to him. They came to witness the miracle of his existence, feeling the warmth of his spirit wrap around them like a comforting blanket. He captivated them with tales of light and beauty, igniting a longing for creativity and knowledge. Artists sought his blessing, musicians strummed their strings with newfound inspiration, and poets scribbled verses in his name. He had an undeniable aura that inspired those around him to reach for their dreams. Apollo's significance among the Olympian gods became apparent. He was the embodiment of light and clarity, a stark contrast to the chaotic world around him. The other gods looked upon him with awe and respect. He was destined to take a prominent place among the Olympians, wielding his lyre like a weapon, using music to soothe hearts and heal wounds. His laughter was a reminder of the joy in existence, and his voice held the power to guide those who had lost their way. The bond between Apollo and his twin sister, Artemis, was equally powerful. Born under the same stars, they shared an unbreakable connection. While Apollo was the god of the sun and enlightenment, Artemis represented the moon and the wild. Together, they brought balance to the world, embodying the harmony of opposites. They were the yin and yang of the divine, forever intertwined in their duties and destinies. But even as Apollo basked in the glow of his birth and burgeoning powers, shadows lurked at the edges of his happiness. The world outside Delos was filled with chaos and strife. Mortals suffered under the weight of their own desires and fears. They looked to the gods for guidance, for light to pierce through their darkness. Apollo felt this pull, a calling to rise above the confines of his beginnings and become the deity they needed. With each passing day, he embraced his role as the god of prophecy, art, and healing. He crafted his lyre, pouring his heart into its strings. The music he created would one day echo through the halls of Olympus, leaving a legacy that would resonate for centuries. As the sun set and the stars appeared, Apollo stood on the shores of Delos, gazing into the horizon, feeling the weight of destiny resting on his shoulders. In those moments of quiet reflection, he understood that his birth was not just a celebration, it was the beginning of a journey. He would be a guide for mortals, a protector of the arts, and a beacon of hope. The laughter of children, the beauty of a sunset, and the melodies of life would become his gifts to the world. Apollo was not just a god of light, he was a promise to all who sought inspiration and healing. As the tides of time ebbed and flowed, his name would be whispered in reverence, echoing through the ages. In his heart, he carried the legacy of his birth, a legacy of beauty, strength, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest moments, the light of hope would always prevail. Desire is a powerful force, a fire that burns within every heart, urging people to reach for something beyond themselves. In ancient Greece, love and desire were more than mere feelings, they were divine forces that shaped the lives of gods and mortals alike. This powerful emotion connected them, intertwining their fates in ways that echoed through the ages. In the heart of this ancient world, desire was both a blessing and a curse. The gods, immortal and majestic, experienced love in its purest form, unclouded by the struggles and pains that plagued human hearts. Their love was intoxicating, vibrant, and often chaotic. For them, desire could manifest in breathtaking moments, as when Apollo laid eyes on Daphne, feeling a yearning that shook him to his very core. It was as if the sun itself ignited within him, urging him to claim her as his own. But for mortals, love was more complicated. It was not only filled with joy but also tinged with heartache, longing, and sorrow. Humans were bound by their emotions, navigating a world where desire could lead to both ecstasy and despair. A simple glance, a stolen kiss, or an unspoken word could ignite a fire within the heart, sending ripples through a life. The thrill of a new love was matched only by the fear of losing it. It was this contrast, the divine and the mortal, that made love a central theme in the myths and stories of ancient Greece. Consider the tale of Eros, the god of love. He wielded his bow and arrows with the precision of a master, striking hearts and igniting flames of passion in even the most stoic of beings. Eros could make the strongest warrior fall in love with the weakest of nymphs, transforming their lives with a single shot. The gods marveled at his power, yet they also feared it. Love was a double-edged sword, capable of creating happiness but also unleashing jealousy and revenge. In their immortal wisdom, the gods understood that desire was as much a part of their existence as their powers. Mortal love, on the other hand, was often fleeting and fragile. Humans, with their imperfections and vulnerabilities, were subject to the whims of fate. The stories of Orpheus and Eurydice, Pygmalion and Galatea, and countless others told of love that faced insurmountable obstacles. These tales were filled with passion but also heartbreak, reminding people of the delicate balance between desire and despair. The longing for connection, for that one person who could make the world seem brighter, drove mortals to risk everything. In the face of rejection or loss, the pain could be overwhelming, yet it was this very anguish that made love so precious. Desire, in all its forms, pushed individuals to confront their deepest fears. When a mortal fell in love, it often meant opening oneself up to vulnerability and the possibility of suffering. The heart could be a fragile thing, easily shattered by betrayal or loss. Yet, In the depths of this vulnerability lay a kind of strength, a resilience that allowed people to rise again, time and time after heartache. In contrast, the gods experienced love differently. For them, desire could be whimsical and capricious. They could choose to embrace or reject their feelings without the same risks that mortals faced. They could pursue their passions with abandon, yet their actions often led to chaos. Take the story of Zeus, who transformed himself into various forms to pursue his desires. His shapeshifting led to both miraculous unions and tragic consequences, as mortal hearts were often caught in the crossfire of divine whims. Despite their differences, both gods and mortals understood that desire could lead to creation and inspiration. For the Greeks, love was not just an emotion, it was a muse. The arts flourished in its presence. Poets, sculptors, and musicians drew upon their experiences of love, pouring their hearts into their work. In the face of desire, they found a way to express the beauty and complexity of human existence. The longing, the joy, the pain, all became a part of the tapestry that defined their culture. Apollo himself was a perfect example of this connection between desire and creativity. His love for the arts was rooted in his own experiences of longing. He inspired countless mortals to create, offering them visions of beauty and truth. The lyre he crafted was not just an instrument, it was a vessel for the feelings he experienced, allowing him to share the depths of his soul. When Apollo played, the world seemed to pause, captivated by the melody that spoke of love and desire. Yet, even as Apollo basked in the joys of his gifts, he could not escape the struggles that came with desire. His pursuit of Daphne was not merely a chase, it was a representation of the conflict between longing and rejection. Every step he took toward her was filled with hope, yet each moment was tinged with the fear of losing her. The weight of this desire shaped his identity, reminding him that love could be as painful as it was beautiful. In the stories of ancient Greece, desire also held a mirror to the human experience. Mortals saw themselves reflected in the tales of gods and heroes, recognizing the struggles, joys, and heartbreaks that mirrored their own lives. Love was a universal language, spoken through the ages, bridging the gap between divine and mortal. It was a reminder that, whether immortal or not, all beings sought connection, understanding, and acceptance. As the sun set over the hills of Greece, casting a warm glow over the landscape, one could almost hear the whispers of love echoing through the air. The stories of gods and mortals mingled in the twilight, creating a symphony of desire that resonated in the hearts of all who listened. Desire, in its many forms, became a thread that connected the fabric of life, weaving together the experiences of both divine and mortal. In this world, love was not just an emotion, it was a powerful force that shaped destinies and inspired creativity. The heart's yearning for connection, the fire of desire, burned brightly, lighting the way for those brave enough to follow its path. It was in the clash of divine longing and mortal heartache that the true nature of desire was revealed, a complex tapestry of joy and pain, hope and despair, forever entwined in the lives of all who dared to love. In the heart of ancient Greece, high upon Mount Olympus, a breathtaking palace stood, shimmering in the sunlight. It was here that the gods ruled, each one powerful and unique, shaping the world below with their divine influence. Among them was Apollo, the god of the sun, music, and prophecy. With his golden hair and radiant smile, he captured the hearts of many, embodying the essence of light and creativity. As the son of Zeus, the king of the gods, Apollo carried a legacy that filled him with pride. Yet, beneath the surface of his brilliance lay a complexity that made him truly remarkable. He was not only a god of beauty but also one of great depth. Apollo's personality was a blend of confidence and vulnerability, making him relatable to mortals and other gods alike. His twin sister, Artemis, was his closest ally, sharing a bond forged in the fires of love and respect. As the goddess of the hunt and the moon, she embodied independence and strength. The two siblings balanced each other perfectly. Apollo's warmth complemented Artemis's coolness. They would often roam the forests together, sharing laughter and stories beneath the stars. Their connection was unbreakable, a testament to the power of family and the beauty of love in all its forms. On Olympus, Apollo's relationship with other gods was equally significant. He was admired by many for his talents, and this admiration sometimes bordered on envy. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, often found herself captivated by his charm. She saw in him a reflection of her own beauty and allure, but also a reminder that even gods could feel the pangs of longing and desire. Despite their mutual attraction, a sense of rivalry brewed between them, a playful tension that added an exciting dynamic to their interactions. Yet, not all relationships were filled with warmth. Apollo had a complicated relationship with Ares, the god of war. Where Apollo brought peace and harmony, Ares thrived in chaos and conflict. Their encounters were often tense, with Ares representing the darker aspects of desire and power. Apollo's calm demeanor clashed with Ares' fiery spirit, creating a fascinating contrast. While they respected each other's strength, their opposing natures kept them at odds. Hera, the queen of the gods, viewed Apollo with a mix of admiration and caution. She recognized his potential but also feared his growing influence. As a protective mother figure, she often reminded him of his responsibilities, urging him to use his powers wisely. Apollo listened, his heart full of respect for her wisdom, yet he longed for the freedom to pursue his passions without constraint. As the god of prophecy, Apollo had a gift that set him apart. He could see glimpses of the future, a burden that weighed heavily on his soul. While this power made him revered, it also isolated him. Knowing what was to come could be both a blessing and a curse. He often found solace in music, pouring his emotions into his lyre, creating melodies that spoke of love, loss, and the beauty of life. With every strum, he expressed the unfiltered emotions that danced within him, a bridge between his divine nature and the human experience. In his pursuit of love, Apollo became a symbol of desire itself. His heart was open and generous, but it also yearned for the unattainable. His attraction to Daphne, the beautiful nymph who sought to escape the chaos of love, revealed a softer side of him. He chased her not just for her beauty, but for the connection he felt deep within his soul. This longing made him vulnerable, reminding him that even gods could feel pain and heartbreak. As he pursued Daphne through the forests and fields, his laughter echoed like music in the air, but it was laced with desperation. He was torn between his desire to love and his understanding of her wish for freedom. Each step he took toward her felt like a battle, a dance of fate that he could not control. In those moments, Apollo was not just a god, he was a heart that ached for connection, longing for a bond that seemed just out of reach. The dynamics among the gods were rich and layered, revealing the complexity of their relationships. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, admired Apollo's intellect and creativity. Their discussions would often lead to deep philosophical insights, bridging the gap between art and knowledge. Athena recognized the importance of Apollo's role in inspiring mortals, encouraging him to continue spreading light and wisdom through his gifts. Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, viewed Apollo with affection, nurturing his talents as she would a cherished child. She saw in him the potential to heal the world through music and prophecy, reminding him of the beauty of life that he could help bring forth. In her presence, Apollo felt a sense of calm and purpose, like the warmth of the sun on a cool spring day. As the seasons changed on Olympus, so too did the relationships among the gods. Their laughter and quarrels echoed throughout the halls, weaving a tapestry of love, jealousy, and rivalry. Each god played a role, contributing to the intricate dance of existence. Apollo stood at the center of it all, a shining light guiding them toward harmony. Yet, in the quiet moments, when the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows danced in the twilight, Apollo often felt a twinge of loneliness. He was surrounded by the laughter and chaos of his fellow gods, but a part of him longed for deeper connections. He sought understanding, a heart that could resonate with his own. This yearning became a melody in his soul, a song that would echo through the ages. In the grand tapestry of Olympus, Apollo's personality shone brightly. He was a god of contradictions, both gentle and fierce, joyous and melancholic. He embodied the essence of humanity, reflecting the emotions that defined existence. Through his relationships with other gods, he learned about love, sacrifice, and the complexities of desire. The laughter of his friends, the wisdom of his mentors, and the heartache of his pursuits all shaped him into the radiant god he was destined to be. As the stars twinkled in the night sky, Apollo looked down upon the world below. His heart swelled with hope and love, ready to embrace the joys and challenges that lay ahead. With every breath, he felt the pulse of life and the rhythm of desire, reminding him that he was not just a god on Olympus, he was a part of something far greater, a beautiful, intricate dance of existence that connected all beings, divine and mortal. In the lush green valleys of ancient Greece, where the mountains kissed the sky and rivers danced through the meadows, a girl named Daphne was born, destined for a life woven with beauty and tragedy. The air was fragrant with the scent of wildflowers, and the sun cast a golden glow over the land, heralding the arrival of a girl who would capture hearts and evoke both longing and sorrow. Daphne was not just any girl, she was the daughter of Peneus, the river god. Her lineage flowed through her like the waters of her father's river, rich and vibrant. Peneus was known for his strength and gentleness, his waters nourishing the land and giving life to all who drank from them. He was revered by mortals and gods alike, embodying the spirit of nature. From her father, Daphne inherited a beauty that was ethereal, with hair like flowing river currents and eyes that sparkled like the sun on water. Her mother was not a mortal but a beautiful nymph, one of the many daughters of Gaia, the earth itself. As a nymph, she embodied the spirit of the forests and the wild, instilling in Daphne a love for nature and a deep connection to the earth around her. From a young age, Daphne felt the pull of the wilderness, the whisper of the trees, and the call of the rivers. She spent her days wandering through the woods, feeling the soft earth beneath her feet and listening to the gentle rustle of leaves. Daphne's birth was not marked by grand celebrations or lavish feasts, but by the quiet joy of nature itself. The moment she took her first breath, the world seemed to come alive. Birds sang sweet melodies, flowers bloomed in brilliant colors, and the winds carried her laughter through the valleys. She was a child of the earth, cradled by nature, and her spirit was free as the gentle breeze. As she grew, Daphne's beauty became the talk of the land. Her laughter was like music, echoing through the trees and drawing the attention of both mortals and gods. But with beauty came the burden of desire. Many suitors sought her hand, enchanted by her grace and charm. They would bring her gifts of flowers, sweet fruits, and trinkets, hoping to win her heart. But Daphne, with a spirit as wild as the forest, felt a deep yearning for freedom that no man could offer. While the other girls around her dreamed of love and marriage, Daphne dreamt of the open skies and the untamed woods. She longed to be one with nature, to roam freely without the constraints of societal expectations. Each time a suitor approached her, her heart sank. They could not understand her desire for independence, the deep connection she felt with the natural world. The very thought of being tied down filled her with dread. In her heart, she cherished the memories of her father's river, the sound of water flowing over rocks, and the feel of soft moss underfoot. She sought solace in the beauty of the world around her, finding joy in the wildflowers that danced in the breeze and the tall trees that swayed gently under the sun. It was in these moments that she felt truly alive, far away from the expectations placed upon her. Yet, as the gods often do, Apollo, the radiant god of the sun, took notice of Daphne. He had heard tales of her beauty, tales that fluttered through Olympus like the wings of a butterfly. When he laid eyes on her, he was immediately enchanted. She was like a breath of fresh air, a wildflower among cultivated blooms. Apollo felt an irresistible pull towards her, a spark of desire igniting within him. To him, she was not just a nymph, she was the embodiment of freedom, a spirit that danced in the light of the sun. But Daphne's heart was not swayed by the allure of a god. In her eyes, Apollo represented everything she wished to escape. The idea of being pursued, of being caught and tamed, sent shivers down her spine. She saw the pain that often accompanied love, the heartbreak, the jealousy, the loss of self. To her, love was a cage, and she was not ready to be trapped. Daphne's spirit was fierce, and she refused to conform to the expectations of her world. The more Apollo pursued her, the more she ran. She sprinted through the forests, her feet flying over roots and rocks, her heart racing. With every glance back, she felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. It was a dance of fate, and she was determined to lead, to be the one who dictated her path. But her lineage also weighed on her. Being the daughter of a river god and a nymph came with its own set of challenges. The expectations of her divine heritage loomed over her, reminding her that she was not just any girl, but a being of great beauty and power. The world expected her to find love, to settle down and fulfill her role. Yet, all she wanted was to run, to be free like the birds soaring high above the trees. In her heart, Daphne felt a conflict raging. She loved her family and honored her lineage, but she also craved her own identity, a space where she could flourish without the chains of expectation. She often sought refuge by the river, where her father would watch over her, his waters whispering secrets of the world. In those quiet moments, she could forget the demands placed upon her and simply be. But as the sun rose and fell, the reality of her situation began to weigh heavily on her. The world around her was filled with beauty, yet it was also filled with desire and longing. She saw the way Apollo looked at her, the intensity of his gaze. It frightened her, filled her with a sense of urgency. She could not let herself be caught in a web of love that might suffocate her spirit. The days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, the tension between desire and freedom grew. Apollo's pursuit became more relentless, and Daphne's heart raced with fear and determination. She wished for a way to escape, to hide from the gaze of the sun god who wanted nothing more than to hold her in his arms. It was during one of these moments of desperation, with the sun setting on the horizon, that Daphne turned to the only source of help she knew, her father, Phineas. With tears in her eyes and a heart full of turmoil, she begged him for relief. "Father," she cried, "I cannot bear the weight of this desire. Please, help me escape from this fate." Phineas, wise and loving, felt his daughter's pain. He understood the struggle she faced, the fierce spirit that sought freedom against the pull of love. In that moment, he made a decision that would change everything. With a wave of his hand and a whisper to the winds, he transformed Daphne. As the last rays of sunlight kissed the earth, she began to change. Her feet became roots, entwined with the earth, and her arms transformed into branches, reaching toward the sky. Daphne, now a beautiful laurel tree, stood tall and proud, forever entwined with nature, free from the pursuits of the world. Her essence remained alive in the rustling leaves and the gentle sway of her branches, a symbol of freedom and resilience. In that instant, she found solace in her transformation, a final escape from the chains of desire that threatened to bind her. In her new form, Daphne became a lasting legacy, a reminder that true beauty lies not only in love but in the courage to be true to oneself. Her story would echo through time, inspiring those who longed for freedom and authenticity, teaching them that sometimes the greatest love is the love we find within ourselves. In the heart of the whispering woods, where sunlight filtered through the leaves like golden rain, nymphs danced among the trees, their laughter ringing like chimes in the soft breeze. They were the spirits of nature, guardians of the forest, and each one possessed a beauty that mirrored the world around them. Among these ethereal beings was Daphne, a young nymph with a spirit as wild as the woods she called home. From the moment she opened her eyes to the world, Daphne was surrounded by the magic of nature. The gentle rustle of leaves, the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of water flowing over stones filled her days with joy. She grew up among the nymphs, each one a sister to her, teaching her the secrets of the forest and the ways of the earth. Their laughter floated on the wind, blending with the songs of birds and the whispers of the river. Every morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Daphne would rise to the soft chirping of crickets and the fluttering of butterflies. The nymphs would gather around her, their eyes sparkling with mischief and love. Together, they would dance in the meadows, their feet barely touching the ground, as if they were part of the very air around them. Each twirl and leap was an expression of their happiness, a celebration of the life that flowed through their veins. Daphne felt an undeniable bond with the earth. The trees stood tall and proud, their branches reaching toward the heavens, and she admired them with a heart full of wonder. Each tree was a guardian, each flower a friend. As she wandered through the woods, she would often stop to touch the rough bark of ancient oaks or to admire the delicate petals of wildflowers. The nymphs taught her to listen to the stories the forest told, the tales of seasons changing, of the quiet strength of the earth, and of the beauty that lay in every moment. Her upbringing among the nymphs was filled with lessons about the balance of life. They showed her how to nurture the land, how to celebrate the cycles of nature, and how to understand the rhythm of the world around her. Each nymph had her own unique gifts, and Daphne learned from them all. One taught her how to gather herbs for healing, another showed her the dance of the fireflies, and yet another whispered the secrets of the stars. The nymphs cherished their freedom, just as Daphne did. They would often gather at twilight, when the sky turned into a canvas of deep blues and purples, and they would tell stories of their adventures. The air would be filled with the scent of blooming jasmine, and the sounds of the forest would create a symphony of life. They shared tales of encounters with the moon and the sun, of playful winds, and of the love they felt for the world. As the seasons changed, so did their games. In the spring, they would race through the blooming fields, their laughter ringing like bells as they chased butterflies. In the summer, they would splash in cool streams, their joy echoing off the rocks. When autumn arrived, they would dance in the falling leaves, their movements a swirl of colors. And in winter, they would huddle together, sharing warmth and stories by the flickering light of fireflies. But Daphne's heart was not just filled with joy, it was also filled with a sense of longing. While she adored her life among the nymphs, she felt a yearning for something beyond the forest. It was as if a piece of her soul was searching for its place in the world. She would often wander away from the group, seeking solace by the river, where she could hear the water's song and the soft whispers of the wind. It was in these moments of solitude that she truly connected with the essence of nature, feeling the pulse of life around her. The other nymphs noticed her quiet moments and often joined her by the riverbank. They understood her desire for connection, and they would sit beside her, their hands intertwined, sharing stories of dreams and hopes. They would talk about the world beyond the trees, the mountains that touched the sky, the vast seas that sparkled under the sun, and the stars that twinkled like diamonds in the night. Daphne listened intently, her imagination igniting with visions of adventure and freedom. In her heart, she knew that she was not meant to be confined to the edges of the forest. The call of the wild was strong within her, urging her to seek out the mysteries that lay beyond the familiar. Yet, the love she felt for her nymph sisters kept her anchored, grounding her in the present moment. They were her family, and the bonds they shared were unbreakable. Daphne's relationship with the other nymphs was filled with love and camaraderie. They were her support system, lifting her up during moments of doubt and celebrating her victories, no matter how small. They would whisper encouragement when she felt overwhelmed by her feelings and cheer her on as she chased after her dreams. The strength of their bond provided her with the courage to embrace her individuality while still belonging to something greater. As days turned into months and seasons changed, Daphne blossomed like the wildflowers around her. She embraced her identity as a nymph, yet she also held onto the dreams that tugged at her heart. She was a creature of the forest, yet she was also a wanderer, filled with curiosity and a thirst for adventure. The nymphs taught her that there was beauty in both the freedom of the wild and the bonds of sisterhood, a delicate balance that she cherished deeply. Yet, within her heart, she felt the pressure of expectation. The stories of love that surrounded her, filled with the beauty of connection and longing, also hinted at the fear of being trapped. The nymphs often spoke of their encounters with gods and mortals, of the love that could bring both joy and heartache. Daphne listened, her heart heavy with the weight of their experiences, knowing that she had to tread carefully in matters of the heart. In those quiet moments by the river, with the sun setting behind the mountains and casting a warm glow over the land, Daphne would ponder her place in the world. She understood that life was a beautiful tapestry, woven with threads of joy, sorrow, love, and longing. The laughter of the nymphs and the whisper of the trees surrounded her, wrapping her in warmth and comfort. It was a reminder that she was never truly alone. As she closed her eyes and let the cool breeze brush against her skin, Daphne felt a sense of peace wash over her. The forest was her home, a sanctuary where she could be herself without fear. Among the nymphs, she discovered the true meaning of love, not just the kind that bound two hearts together, but the love that filled the world around her. It was the love of the earth, the sun, and the river, the gentle reminder that she was a part of something vast and beautiful. With every breath, she absorbed the essence of the forest, the laughter of the nymphs echoing in her heart. In that moment, she knew that she was not just a daughter of the river god, but a spirit of the wild, destined to dance among the trees and celebrate the beauty of life. The world was full of possibilities, and Daphne was ready to embrace them all, one step at a time. In the soft glow of twilight, when the world was painted in shades of purple and gold, a little god with tiny wings flitted through the heavens. This was Eros, the embodiment of love and desire, known to many as Cupid. With his golden bow and quiver full of arrows, he carried the power to ignite passion and stir hearts. Though small in size, his influence was immense, capable of changing the fates of gods and mortals alike with just a single shot. Eros, always the playful mischief maker, observed the world from his lofty perch among the clouds. He loved watching the dance of love unfold among the mortals and the gods, noting the beauty and chaos that came with it. But there was something that caught his eye one day, something that pulled at his heartstrings and compelled him to act. Apollo, the radiant god of the sun, music, and prophecy, wandered through the fields, his golden hair flowing like sunlight, his eyes shimmering with brilliance. Apollo was known for his many talents, but he was also known for his pride. He often boasted that no one could rival his skills or beauty. With his lyre in hand, he filled the air with enchanting melodies that made flowers bloom and rivers flow faster. Yet, beneath his confident exterior lay a longing, a desire for love that seemed just out of reach. Eros watched with amusement, curious about the sun god's vanity. Apollo had been so captivated by his own reflection that he failed to notice the world around him. Eros knew that love was not merely about beauty and talent, it was a complex tapestry woven with emotions, vulnerability, and connection. Eros decided that it was time to teach Apollo a lesson about love and humility. With a mischievous smile, Eros drew an arrow from his quiver. This arrow was special, imbued with a powerful magic that could stir the heart and make even the most aloof god fall deeply in love. Eros aimed carefully, his heart racing with excitement, and let the arrow fly. It soared through the air, leaving a trail of golden light behind it, until it found its mark, Apollo. The moment the arrow pierced Apollo's heart, everything changed. A warmth flooded through him, unlike anything he had ever felt. It was a powerful yearning, a need to connect with someone beyond himself. His mind filled with thoughts of love, and a name echoed in his heart, Daphne. He had heard whispers of her beauty, the tales of her wild spirit and unyielding independence. She was the daughter of Peneus, the river god, and known for her stunning grace and strength. As the arrow took effect, Apollo felt an overwhelming desire to seek out Daphne, to win her heart and share a love that was as fierce as the sun itself. He imagined her laughter dancing through the trees, her hair flowing like the gentle currents of the river, and the light in her eyes that could rival the stars. No longer was he simply the proud sun god, he was now a lover, ready to pursue the heart of the one who captivated his soul. Eros, watching from above, felt a mix of delight and mischief. He had crafted this moment with care, understanding that Apollo's confidence would need to be tempered with humility. Love was a powerful force, one that could bring joy but also vulnerability. The little god chuckled as he thought of the sun god's reaction when he realized that winning Daphne's heart would not be as simple as strumming a lyre or flaunting his looks. Apollo, now driven by desire, set out to find Daphne. He called upon the winds, asking them to guide him to her. The forest, with its lush greenery and vibrant flowers, welcomed him, and the sun began to dip low on the horizon, casting a golden light that made everything seem magical. With every step, Apollo's heart raced. He could feel the heat of passion coursing through him, urging him forward. But as he walked, Apollo also felt the weight of uncertainty. What if Daphne did not feel the same way? What if she rejected him? These thoughts swirled in his mind, but the power of the arrow urged him onward. He would not let fear stand in the way of love. As he entered the forest, the sounds of nature surrounded him. Birds sang sweetly, and the leaves whispered secrets in the breeze. The air was alive with the scent of blooming flowers, and for a moment, Apollo felt as though he were in a dream. He envisioned himself standing beside Daphne, sharing laughter and music, creating a world where they could both be free. His heart soared as he recalled tales of Daphne's beauty and spirit. He remembered how she roamed the woods, a wildflower untamed, a spirit that danced among the trees. She was a creature of nature, not bound by the expectations of love, but driven by her own desires. The thought of her brought both excitement and fear. Would she embrace his affection, or would she run away, just as she had done with so many others? As he continued through the forest, Apollo finally caught sight of her. Daphne stood by the river, her hair cascading down her back like a waterfall of gold, her eyes sparkling with life. She was every bit as enchanting as he had imagined. Time seemed to stand still as Apollo watched her, captivated by the grace with which she moved. The way she interacted with nature, the gentle caress of her hand on the leaves, the laughter that bubbled forth as she chased after a butterfly, was mesmerizing. In that moment, his heart swelled with a longing so intense it almost took his breath away. The arrow had worked its magic, igniting a fire within him that was both beautiful and terrifying. He felt an overwhelming urge to approach her, to speak the words that danced on his tongue. But doubt lingered at the edges of his heart. What if she rejected him? What if she didn't want the kind of love he yearned to give? With every ounce of courage he could muster, Apollo stepped forward, calling out to her. "Daphne!" His voice echoed through the trees, soft yet powerful, filled with both vulnerability and determination. The moment he spoke her name, Daphne turned, her eyes wide with surprise. As their gazes met, time seemed to hold its breath. The world around them faded away, leaving just the two of them standing at the edge of destiny. Apollo could see the beauty of the forest reflected in her eyes, the wild spirit that matched his own, and he knew he had to try. "Daphne," he began, his voice trembling with emotion, "I have been captivated by your spirit, your beauty. I seek not just to possess your heart, but to cherish it, to share in the wonders of this world with you." His heart pounded in his chest as he poured out his feelings, each word a step deeper into the vulnerability of love. But as he spoke, Daphne felt a surge of fear. She sensed the weight of expectation that came with his words, the burden of being loved by a god. Love could be both enchanting and entrapping, and she had sworn to herself that she would never be caught in a web of desire. She had seen how love could transform the strongest into the weakest, how it could bind even the fiercest spirits in chains. Eros, watching from his hidden perch, felt a mixture of emotions himself. He had set this stage for a reason, to teach Apollo the beauty of love, but also to reveal the complexities that accompanied it. Love was not just about desire, it was also about respect, understanding, and the willingness to let go when necessary. As Apollo waited for her response, Daphne felt a battle within her heart. The longing for connection warred with the fear of being caught. She admired the god before her, but she also valued her independence and her place among the nymphs. How could she reconcile these conflicting desires? With a heavy heart, Daphne took a step back, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Apollo, you are a god of beauty and light, but I am a creature of the wild. I cannot be tamed, and I fear the chains that love can create." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of her decision. Apollo's heart sank, the warmth of desire now mixed with the chill of rejection. He felt the sharp sting of vulnerability, the realization that love was not simply about wanting someone but about understanding their heart. In that moment, the arrows of desire lost their power, and he was left with the stark truth: love, in its purest form, required more than just passion. As they stood there, two souls caught in the web of fate, the forest around them held its breath. Eros watched, knowing that the dance of love was just beginning. Apollo had been struck by the arrow, but now he had to learn what it truly meant to love. In the heart of the wild, with a nymph as fierce and free as the wind, the sun god faced a choice that would define not just his heart, but the essence of love itself. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden light through the trees, Daphne stood at the edge of the river, her heart heavy with a tumult of emotions. The water flowed gently beside her, mirroring her inner turmoil. Apollo's voice still echoed in her ears, filled with desire and longing, but all she felt was a desperate need for freedom. Love, she thought, was not a gentle breeze, it was a storm that could uproot her very spirit. In that moment, Daphne's heart cried out for the sanctuary of the forest. She had always found solace among the trees, the flowers, and the whispering winds. Nature had been her first love, a love that wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. Each morning, as she greeted the sun, she felt the pulse of the earth beneath her feet. It was a connection deeper than any romance could offer, a bond that filled her with a sense of belonging and purpose. Daphne was a creature of the wild, wild and untamed, just like the thickets of the forest she roamed. She relished the freedom to run barefoot through the meadows, to lose herself in the colors of the petals, and to feel the cool water dance around her ankles. Love, in its human form, felt like a cage. It was the kind of feeling that could take her away from the only life she truly cherished. While many nymphs swooned at the mere mention of Apollo, the powerful sun god, Daphne felt a wave of disdain wash over her. She had witnessed the consequences of desire, how it could transform joyous moments into shackles of expectation and obligation. The stories of love among her nymph sisters often ended with heartbreak or surrender. She had seen them lose themselves, caught in the tides of emotion, their laughter fading into whispers of regret. The last thing she wanted was to be another tale of longing and loss. The thought of losing herself in the pursuit of love filled her with dread. She wanted to maintain her identity, to roam freely under the canopy of stars without a heart weighed down by someone else's dreams. As she looked up at the sky, the stars began to twinkle like diamonds scattered across a vast canvas. She felt a pull towards the infinite, a yearning for the vastness of the world around her. In that moment, she realized that the universe held endless possibilities, and she wanted to embrace every single one of them without being tied down. Daphne had dedicated her life to nature. Each tree she touched was a friend, every breeze that brushed against her was a whisper of encouragement. She spent her days laughing with the flowers, racing with the wind, and swimming in the clear waters of the river. This was her love, pure and unrestrained. The thought of sharing this world with someone who might expect more from her felt suffocating. As the echoes of Apollo's declaration faded, she felt a familiar sense of peace wash over her. The sounds of the forest wrapped around her like a protective cloak. Each rustle of leaves and chirp of crickets sang to her spirit, reminding her that she was not alone. Nature understood her, accepted her for who she was, free from the demands of love. Daphne remembered the times she had watched her nymph sisters fall head over heels for gods and mortals alike. Their eyes sparkled with dreams, but she could also see the shadows lurking behind those smiles, the fear of abandonment, the anxiety of being left behind. They had become entangled in webs of affection, and she had always wanted to keep her heart safe from such entrapments. Love could be intoxicating, yes, but it also came with heartbreak. The more she thought about it, the more she felt the weight of expectation. What would Apollo want from her? Would he demand her time, her loyalty? Would he want to mold her into something she was not? The very idea made her shudder. With a heavy heart, she turned away from the river, her eyes scanning the lush landscape of her home. The vibrant greens of the leaves and the soft petals of wildflowers whispered promises of freedom. She felt a sudden rush of gratitude for the life she had built among the trees, a life that allowed her to dance with the elements without reservation. She could not imagine trading her wild, beautiful existence for a confined love. As the shadows lengthened around her, she took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the sweet scent of jasmine and earth. Each breath reminded her of her purpose, to protect the beauty of the forest, to revel in its chaos, and to remain true to herself. The thought of Apollo lingered like a fleeting shadow, but she pushed it aside. His golden allure might captivate many, but to her, he was just a reminder of what she wanted to escape. The idea of becoming the object of someone else's desire felt foreign. She cherished her independence and would not allow anyone, even a god, to dictate how she should feel or who she should be. As the night descended, the stars shone brighter than ever, illuminating her path. In the darkness, she felt a sense of liberation wash over her. The moonlight danced across the water, reflecting her spirit, a wild, free soul that could not be captured. She closed her eyes, allowing the sounds of the forest to envelop her, reminding her that love existed in many forms, and the purest love was the one she had for herself. Daphne had made her choice. She would not be swayed by the allure of desire. Instead, she would remain a daughter of the wild, a nymph dedicated to the beauty of nature and the joy of living authentically. The winds whispered their approval, and the trees stood tall, honoring her decision. She was a creature of the earth, not meant to be caught in the nets of love. As she walked further into the depths of the forest, her heart lightened with each step. The night was alive with magic, and the stars above twinkled like tiny promises. She was exactly where she belonged, among the wildflowers, the dancing streams, and the ancient trees. The world was vast, and her spirit was free. In her heart, she knew that she would always choose the wild over the confines of love, for that was where her true happiness lay. The forest was alive, brimming with the sweet scent of wildflowers and the soft rustle of leaves. Sunlight filtered through the trees, casting playful shadows on the ground. It was a perfect day, yet there was an unmistakable tension in the air, a sense that something significant was about to unfold. Apollo, the radiant god of the sun, strode through the woods, his heart pounding with anticipation. He had searched for Daphne ever since the moment Eros's arrow had struck him. The feelings that had ignited within him were a whirlwind of passion and curiosity. He was not just drawn to her beauty, he was compelled by a longing to connect with her spirit, to experience a love that transcended his own ideals. As he wandered deeper into the forest, Apollo could hear the faint melody of a song drifting through the air. It was a sweet, lilting sound, filled with laughter and life. He followed the sound, his heart racing, until he finally emerged into a sunlit clearing. And there she was, Daphne, standing among the flowers, her hair flowing like a cascade of golden sunlight. Daphne was lost in her own world, twirling with the wind, her arms outstretched as if she were embracing the very essence of nature. She laughed softly, a sound so pure it could make even the toughest of hearts melt. Apollo watched, entranced, as she danced with the petals around her, her feet barely touching the ground. In that moment, he felt the earth beneath him pulse with life, as if it, too, were enchanted by her presence. But as he stepped into the clearing, ready to introduce himself, Daphne's laughter faded, and she turned to face him. Her bright eyes narrowed, and a flicker of surprise transformed into wariness. Apollo stood there, his breath caught in his throat, overwhelmed by the beauty before him. Yet, he could see that her expression was not one of delight. It was a mix of curiosity and something else, fear, perhaps. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. It was a simple question, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken words. The sun god felt exposed under her gaze, as if she could see straight through him, into the very depths of his heart. "I am Apollo, son of Zeus," he replied, his voice warm and inviting. "I am the god of music, poetry, and the sun. I have come to find you, to speak with you." Daphne took a step back, shaking her head. "What do you want with me, Apollo? I am just a nymph of the forest. You belong to the heavens, and I to the wild. We are worlds apart." Her words struck him like a cold gust of wind, halting his excitement. Apollo had expected admiration, perhaps even awe, but he was met with resistance. It was a sharp reminder that his divine status meant little in the face of true independence. "I want to understand you, Daphne," he replied earnestly. "I want to know your heart, your spirit. I seek a connection." Daphne raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism crossing her features. "Connection? You speak of connection, yet you are a god. You dwell in the clouds, above the earth, where emotions can be fleeting and love can easily become a game. I am bound to the earth, to the trees and the rivers. My love is for the wild, not for the expectations of divinity." Her words were like arrows piercing Apollo's heart. He felt his own desires clash with her reality, and for the first time, he realized how little he understood of what it meant to love someone who valued independence above all else. "But what is love without the desire to share it?" he countered, desperation creeping into his voice. "I have felt a pull toward you unlike anything I have ever experienced. You are wild and free, and that is what draws me to you." Daphne shook her head, her expression firm. "Love is not merely desire, Apollo. It is a bond that can suffocate, a weight that can crush the spirit. I have watched others lose themselves in it, becoming shadows of who they once were. I refuse to be trapped by the expectations that love can bring. I cherish my freedom above all else. A heavy silence hung between them, thick with unspoken truths. Apollo could see the determination in her eyes, and for a moment, he felt the chasm between them widen. How could he convince her that love could be freeing, a dance between two souls rather than a tethering to one? I do not wish to bind you, Daphne, he said softly, his voice almost a whisper. I only want to share in the beauty of your spirit. To love is to celebrate who you are, not to change you. His heart ached as he spoke, longing to reach her, to show her the world as he saw it, a place where love blossomed without constraints. But Daphne's gaze remained resolute. And what if I do not wish to be celebrated in your way? What if I want to be alone in my wildness? Her voice softened slightly, but the firmness remained. You see me as a prize to be won, Apollo. Love for you seems like a conquest, not a partnership. I do not want to be a trophy in your collection of admirers. Apollo felt a wave of frustration wash over him. He had never thought of love as a conquest. To him, it was a bridge between souls, a path toward unity. I am not here to conquer you, Daphne. I am here to learn from you, to understand your heart. Please, do not dismiss my feelings as mere desire. Daphne sighed, torn between the warmth of his words and her fear of entrapment. She could sense the sincerity in his voice, yet the idea of love, especially from a god, was daunting. You do not understand, Apollo. I am meant to run with the wind, to dance among the trees. I cannot tether my heart to one who seeks to claim it. With each passing moment, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting shadows that danced around them like specters of doubt. Apollo felt the chill of rejection settling into his bones, yet he could not bring himself to leave. He yearned to understand, to bridge the gap between their worlds. Is there no way for us to share this moment, to be two spirits intertwined in the beauty of the forest? He asked, his voice thick with emotion. I can promise you that my heart is yours to explore, not to bind. Daphne hesitated, torn between the enchantment of his words and the pull of her own convictions. She had lived a life of wild freedom, untouched by the confines of love, and she feared that opening her heart could lead her down a path she could not return from. I cannot promise you anything, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart belongs to the wild. In that moment, Apollo understood. He had entered her world, filled with beauty and danger, and he felt the weight of her independence. It was not just about winning her over, it was about respecting her choices, her desires, and the life she had built among the trees. He stepped back, feeling the ache of longing, but also a sense of clarity. Then let us enjoy this moment, as two souls connected by the magic of the forest, he offered gently. I will not chase you, but I will stand beside you, celebrating the beauty of the world that you cherish. Daphne looked at him, surprise flickering in her eyes. Perhaps there was something different about this god, something that set him apart from the tales she had heard. She could see that his heart was genuine, and for the first time, she felt a small spark of curiosity ignite within her. Very well, she replied, a tentative smile breaking through her initial resistance. Let us share this moment, but do not expect more from me than what I am willing to give. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Apollo and Daphne stood together in the clearing, two worlds colliding yet somehow harmonizing. It was a fragile beginning, marked by uncertainty but also the promise of something beautiful. They were two souls, each carrying the weight of their beliefs, but in that moment, they were simply two beings celebrating the magic of life, a dance that was just beginning. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, Apollo stood at the edge of the forest, his heart pounding with a mix of determination and uncertainty. He had experienced many emotions in his life, but nothing compared to the fiery desire he felt for Daphne. He could still recall the way her laughter danced on the wind, the sparkle in her eyes that both enchanted and terrified him. She had captivated him in a way he never thought possible, igniting a flame that burned bright within him. But now, as he prepared to pursue her, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into unknown territory, a realm filled with both hope and heartache. The sun god knew that he had to find Daphne again. The mere thought of her brought a rush of adrenaline. He needed to convince her that love could be a beautiful journey, not a chain that would bind her spirit. But what if she rejected him again? What if she turned and ran, not just from him, but from the very idea of love? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, yet the warmth of hope kept him moving forward. With each step into the forest, he felt the vibrant energy of nature surrounding him, fueling his resolve. The rustling leaves seemed to whisper encouragement, urging him to seek her out. He called her name softly, letting it flow through the air like a gentle breeze. Daphne. His voice was a mixture of longing and anticipation. Where are you? The sound of her name echoed through the trees, but silence met him in return. His heart sank for a moment, but he pushed the doubt aside. He knew she was close. She was part of this magical realm, entwined with the essence of the forest itself. He could feel her presence, as if she were a gentle spirit lingering just beyond his reach. As he ventured deeper, he stumbled upon a clearing where sunlight cascaded down, illuminating the wildflowers swaying in the gentle breeze. The beauty of the moment nearly took his breath away, but it also intensified his yearning. He could envision Daphne here, dancing among the blooms, her laughter mingling with the melody of nature. He could almost see her, a fleeting shadow darting through the trees, just out of sight. Apollo! The voice rang out like a sweet bell, echoing through the glade. His heart leapt at the sound. It was her. He turned quickly, but the figure slipped away before he could catch a glimpse. She was teasing him, playing a game of hide and seek. The thought ignited a fire within him. He felt alive, determined to find her. He sprinted after her, the forest blurring around him as he pushed his legs to their limits. Apollo moved like the sun itself, fierce and blazing, but he was not the only one in the forest. Daphne was quick, graceful, and effortlessly elusive. She danced among the trees, her laughter ringing out, leaving him both exhilarated and frustrated. Daphne, he called again, his voice a mix of desperation and excitement. Please don't run from me. But she only laughed, her voice like a soft wind. It echoed through the branches, light and airy, drawing him deeper into the woods. Each step was both a thrill and a torment, pulling him closer to her while simultaneously filling him with doubt. As he chased her through the twisting paths, he could see glimpses of her, her golden hair shimmering in the sunlight, her figure flitting between the trunks of ancient trees. The beauty of her movements captivated him, but each time he reached out, she vanished, leaving only the haunting melody of her laughter behind. The emotional turmoil within him grew. How could something so beautiful feel so painful? The forest around him became a blur of greens and browns, filled with the sounds of rustling leaves and chirping birds, yet it felt as if time had slowed to a crawl. He felt alive, and yet each moment stretched painfully, drawing out his longing. Why did she evade him so? Was she afraid of him, or of the love he offered? Every heartbeat reminded him that he was chasing something that felt both precious and elusive. Daphne, meanwhile, was caught in a whirlwind of emotions herself. She had heard Apollo calling her name, his voice a beautiful mixture of desire and sincerity. But as she ran, her heart raced not just from the thrill of the chase, but from fear. Fear of losing herself, of becoming entangled in something she had sworn to avoid. With every ounce of her being, she wanted to be free, to remain a spirit of the wild, untouched by the expectations of love. She darted between the trees, her heart pounding in her chest. Apollo was relentless, his determination igniting a fire in her that both frightened and thrilled her. She could hear his footsteps close behind, feel the warmth of his presence encroaching on her sanctuary. It was exhilarating yet terrifying, like standing on the edge of a precipice, uncertain of what lay below. Daphne wanted to stop, to turn around and confront him, to tell him that her heart belonged to the forest and to the freedom it offered. Yet, there was a part of her that felt drawn to him, that yearned to understand the passion he expressed. She could not deny that a small piece of her wanted to see how this chase would unfold, to experience the thrill of being pursued by a god. As Apollo closed the distance, he called out to her, "Daphne, wait. I only want to talk." His voice was filled with emotion, echoing through the trees like a plea. He could sense her hesitation, feel the tug-of-war between her desire for freedom and her curiosity about him. Each word was like a gentle pull on the thread that connected them. Finally, Daphne slowed, the temptation to turn back warring with her instinct to flee. She paused in a sunlit glade, breathless and uncertain. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Apollo, catching up to her, stood just a few steps away, his chest rising and falling with exertion. "I'm not here to take anything from you," he said, his voice softer now, as if he were speaking to a frightened animal. "I just want to understand you. Please, let me in." The sincerity in his eyes pierced through her defenses, leaving her momentarily vulnerable. Daphne felt her heart flutter, a mix of emotions swirling within her. "You don't understand, Apollo," she whispered, the weight of her fears pressing down on her. "Love is not something to chase after. It can trap you, take you away from who you truly are." "I don't want to trap you," he replied earnestly, stepping closer. "I want to be a part of your world, to share in its beauty. Love can be freeing, it doesn't have to confine you. Just give me a chance to show you." In that moment, they stood on the precipice of something profound. Two souls, filled with longing and fear, caught in the dance of desire and independence. The chase had transformed into a moment of connection, a fragile bridge spanning the gap between their worlds. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting a golden glow around them, illuminating the truth that lay just beneath the surface. Daphne could feel the weight of his words, but her heart still raced with uncertainty. She had built walls to protect her wild spirit, but the glimmer of something new sparked within her. As she looked into Apollo's eyes, she saw not just a god, but a possibility. Yet she also felt the pull of the earth beneath her, reminding her of the freedom she cherished. In that heartbeat, everything hung in the balance, the thrill of the chase, the ache of desire, and the sweet scent of possibility. But with every moment that passed, she realized that the chase was more than just a pursuit. It was an awakening, a confrontation of two worlds that would forever change the course of their lives. In the quiet moments before dawn, when the world still holds its breath, a sense of magic hangs in the air. It's in these delicate spaces that fate whispers its secrets, weaving the threads of life into a tapestry of unexpected twists. For Apollo and Daphne, the notion of fate was not merely an abstract concept, it was a living force, guiding their hearts and entwining their destinies in a dance as old as time. Apollo, the radiant god of light and truth, stood on the edge of the forest, feeling the weight of fate pressing down on him. He had pursued Daphne with the passion of a sunbeam breaking through the clouds. Yet, with every step he took toward her, he felt an invisible hand steering the course of his love. Fate was like a thread in the loom of existence, intricate and complex, binding them together in ways they could hardly comprehend. From the very beginning, fate had played a role in their lives. Apollo was born into a world of gods, where the whims of destiny shaped their actions and reactions. His very existence was a testament to the unpredictable nature of life. In contrast, Daphne emerged from a lineage that celebrated the spirit of nature, her identity intertwined with the very earth she cherished. Both were caught in a web spun by forces far beyond their control, pushing them toward a crossroads where their paths would meet. As Apollo chased after Daphne, each heartbeat echoed the age-old struggle between desire and destiny. He had come to realize that his pursuit was not just about winning her love, it was about understanding the delicate balance between their worlds. Each encounter felt charged with the weight of fate's hand, as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting to see how their story would unfold. The forest itself seemed to pulse with anticipation, its trees witnesses to the ancient forces at play. Daphne, too, felt the tug of fate as she danced through the trees. With every step, she sensed that her life was guided by something larger than herself. It was as if the spirits of the forest were whispering to her, reminding her of her roots and the freedom that came with being a nymph. The chase stirred her emotions, igniting both fear and intrigue. She was torn between her desire to escape and the unexplainable pull she felt toward Apollo. Each moment of hesitation felt laden with the weight of destiny. The theme of fate is woven into the very fabric of mythology, where the gods play their roles as both actors and puppets in a grand play. Apollo, with his golden hair and radiant smile, seemed to be favored by the fates, yet here he was, struggling to win the heart of a mortal. It was a poignant reminder that even the mightiest beings could be subject to forces beyond their understanding. Apollo's passion was fierce, but fate's intricate patterns suggested that he was not in control of the outcome. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape, Apollo found himself standing in a clearing, where the scent of wildflowers hung thick in the air. It was here, in this enchanted space, that he confronted the reality of his feelings for Daphne. He had imagined their lives intertwined, but fate had other plans. Each moment spent in her presence intensified the realization that they were bound by more than mere attraction. They were caught in a cosmic dance, each step choreographed by the unseen hands of fate. The gods of Olympus watched from their lofty perches, their eyes filled with a mix of amusement and concern. They knew the weight of destiny and the twists it could take. The outcome of Apollo and Daphne's story was not just a reflection of their choices, but a testament to the intricate dance of fate. It was a reminder that sometimes, the things we desire most are not always meant to be. Fate was a force to be respected, a reminder that life can twist and turn in the most unexpected ways. Apollo's heart raced as he contemplated the inevitable conflict of desire and duty. He yearned for Daphne to see the beauty of love, to understand that their fates could be intertwined if only she would allow it. But he was aware that her heart was anchored in the freedom of the forest, and the tug of fate was strong. In his pursuit, he felt both exhilaration and sorrow, for he knew that the threads of their destinies were intricately woven, and it was not solely up to him to shape the outcome. As Daphne eluded him, the reality of her disdain for love hung heavy in the air. Each time she dodged his advances, he felt the sting of fate's cruel humor. How could something so powerful be so gentle and yet so unforgiving? It was a bittersweet lesson that love, when entangled with destiny, often leads to heartache. The echoes of laughter and the rustling of leaves painted a vivid picture of their contrasting worlds. She belonged to the earth, while he belonged to the skies. Their story became a reflection of the eternal struggle faced by many, of wanting something deeply but feeling powerless to grasp it. Fate acted as both guide and adversary, pushing them closer while simultaneously pulling them apart. Apollo, with his shining light, was a beacon of hope, yet fate cast shadows that threatened to obscure their paths. As the days turned into weeks, the chase became a poignant exploration of their souls. Each encounter carried the weight of their choices, the unspoken words hanging in the air like mist. The forest was alive with energy, a vibrant backdrop to their unfolding tale. Fate, in its quiet majesty, loomed over them, shaping their lives in ways they could never have anticipated. In the depths of the forest, surrounded by the sounds of nature, the two souls faced the truth of their destinies. Would Apollo continue to pursue Daphne, risking the potential heartache? Would Daphne ever allow herself to embrace the love he offered, or would she remain steadfast in her quest for independence? With every heartbeat, they were drawn closer, yet fate continued to weave its intricate web, reminding them of the delicate balance of life. The theme of fate is not merely a backdrop to their story, it is a living force that pulses through every moment. The struggle between desire and destiny creates a powerful emotional landscape, rich with meaning and depth. The bond they share is both a blessing and a curse, illuminated by the brilliance of Apollo's love and shrouded in the shadows of Daphne's fears. In the end, the role of fate shapes their destinies in ways neither could fully comprehend. It is a reminder that love, while beautiful, is often fraught with complexity. As the sun sets, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Apollo and Daphne stand on the precipice of change, guided by the unseen hands of fate. Unsure of where their paths will lead, but knowing that the journey is as essential as the destination. As the sun began to rise, casting a golden glow over the land, the beauty of nature unfolded like a story waiting to be told. It was in this enchanting landscape that the pursuit between Apollo and Daphne would unfold, a dance of desire played out against a backdrop of breathtaking scenery. Each element of nature, the trees, the rivers, the wildflowers, became not just a setting but a character in their tale, reflecting the tumult of their emotions. The forest where Daphne roamed was alive with vibrant colors and sounds. Tall trees reached for the sky, their leaves whispering secrets in the gentle breeze. Sunlight filtered through the branches, creating a dappled pattern on the forest floor that seemed to pulse with life. Each step Apollo took on this soft, earthy carpet felt both exhilarating and heavy with longing. The air was sweet with the scent of blooming wildflowers, filling his lungs with the essence of life and love. It was a paradise, yet the pursuit felt like a bittersweet game of cat and mouse, full of both hope and heartache. The streams that meandered through the forest sparkled like diamonds under the sun, their laughter echoing the joy and sorrow that filled the air. Water cascaded over smooth stones, creating a melody that underscored Apollo's frantic heartbeat as he chased after the elusive nymph. With every splash, he could almost hear Daphne's laughter mingling with the sound, a reminder of the lightness of her spirit and the freedom she cherished. The water symbolized life, fluid and unpredictable, just like the emotions swirling within him. Each time he reached for her, the current of fate seemed to pull her further away, like a leaf caught in a rushing river. Daphne, in her element, danced through the trees, moving with grace and agility that made her seem as if she were part of the very forest itself. She was a spirit of the woods, her heart intertwined with the flora and fauna around her. As she navigated the landscape, the sunlight caught her hair, creating a halo that made her look ethereal. Each flower that bent under her gentle touch seemed to bloom brighter, and the trees leaned in closer, as if wanting to listen to her heartbeat. Nature was her sanctuary, a place where love had no claim on her spirit. Yet, with every step, she felt the tug of Apollo's desire, a force that threatened to disrupt her harmony with the natural world. The paths they took were winding and unpredictable, just like love itself. Thick roots sprawled across the ground, both obstacles and invitations to stop and appreciate the beauty of their surroundings. Wildflowers painted the landscape in bursts of color, symbolizing the fleeting nature of life and love. They bloomed fiercely, but for a short time, just like the moments Apollo and Daphne shared. Each flower, with its delicate petals and intoxicating fragrance, seemed to echo Daphne's own heart, a beautiful yet vulnerable thing, yearning for freedom. The hills rolled gently in the distance, their silhouettes softened by the haze of the morning light. As Apollo chased Daphne, he climbed higher, feeling the exhilaration of being alive, yet also the weight of desire pressing down on him. The height offered a vantage point, yet it also reminded him of the distance between them. The more he pursued her, the more the landscape shifted from tranquil beauty to an arena of conflict, where nature became a reflection of his internal struggle. It was as if the earth itself was caught in the tension of their chase, embodying the push and pull of their desires. When Apollo caught a glimpse of Daphne through the trees, it was as if the world fell silent. The vibrant colors of the forest faded into a blur, and time itself seemed to hold its breath. In that moment, everything around him, the rustling leaves, the trickling streams, and the whispering wind, combined to create a symphony that spoke to the depths of his longing. Nature amplified his emotions, each heartbeat echoing in the stillness, reverberating through the landscape like the notes of a love song. Daphne, aware of the chase, felt the heat of Apollo's gaze upon her. The very ground beneath her seemed to pulse with her heartbeat, matching the rhythm of her flight. She moved as if the forest was her dance partner, twirling through the underbrush, laughing at the idea of being caught. Each leap and bound was a celebration of her independence, a declaration that she belonged to no one but the earth. Yet, the beauty around her reminded her of the deep connection she had with nature, as well as the unexpected longing she felt toward Apollo. It was a conflict that echoed in the rustling leaves and the swaying branches. In the thick of the forest, the setting sun painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, the beauty almost surreal. It was here that the chase took on a new meaning. The soft glow highlighted the contours of Apollo's face, making him look both fierce and vulnerable. He was not just a god pursuing a nymph, he was a man engulfed in emotion, longing for something he could not fully grasp. The landscape became a mirror of his heart, beautiful yet fraught with tension. Every moment felt charged, as if the very air was thick with the promise of love or the threat of loss. As twilight descended, the forest transformed into a realm of shadows and whispers. The moon began to rise, casting a silvery light over the trees, illuminating the path ahead. It was a world suspended between dreams and reality, where Apollo's love and Daphne's independence clashed and mingled. The symbols of nature, the trees, the flowers, the flowing water, all bore witness to this timeless story of desire. They were the silent observers of a tale that would be etched into the heart of the earth, a narrative of love and longing that transcended time. In this beautiful setting, where the lines between desire and freedom blurred, the true essence of their pursuit became clear. Nature, with all its splendor and wildness, served as the backdrop for their emotions, embodying the complexities of love. Every rustle of the leaves seemed to whisper secrets, every bird song echoed the heart's deepest yearnings. The landscape itself became a character in their story, a living testament to the beauty and pain of desire. The pursuit was not merely a chase, it was a dance of souls in a landscape that celebrated both beauty and freedom. Apollo and Daphne found themselves caught in this enchanting world, where nature cradled their emotions and echoed their struggles. The physical setting became a symbol of their hearts, vibrant yet complex, inviting them to confront their deepest fears and desires. Each step taken on the forest floor, each breath of the fresh air, brought them closer to understanding not only their love, but also the very essence of who they were within the vastness of the world. Daphne felt a surge of panic as she raced through the forest, the sound of Apollo's footsteps echoing behind her. In her heart, a mix of fear and determination pulsed wildly. The beauty of the woods she loved so dearly now felt like a maze, and every shadow seemed to whisper her name, urging her to flee. Yet, she was not alone in her flight. The forest was alive, and within its depths, her allies stirred, ready to lend their aid. As Daphne dashed past towering trees, their ancient trunks seemed to lean in, as if sensing her distress. They had stood watch over her all her life, their branches heavy with the weight of countless secrets. These trees, with their rough bark and leafy canopies, were her protectors. Each time she danced in their shade, they embraced her spirit, and now, they whispered encouragement as she ran. They reminded her of the strength rooted deep within the earth, urging her to trust in her abilities. The rivers flowed nearby, their crystal waters sparkling in the dappled sunlight. The river gods, guardians of the streams, sensed her turmoil. They bubbled with laughter, their voices mingling with the gentle rush of water. "Daphne, dear nymph, we will help you," they seemed to say. The current swirled playfully, and as she approached, the water danced with joy, beckoning her to seek refuge in its depths. She could feel their energy surging through her, and the river promised safety, a way to slip away from the chase. As she passed a glimmering brook, the water began to rise, forming small waves that shimmered like jewels. The river gods, with their flowing hair and shimmering scales, emerged briefly from the water, their eyes filled with compassion. They offered her their powers, their ability to hide and protect. "If you leap into the water, we will shield you from Apollo's gaze," they promised. But Daphne hesitated, knowing that entering the water would mean relinquishing her freedom. She loved the rivers, but she needed to remain on land, to remain true to herself. The woodland creatures sensed her dilemma. From behind the bushes and under the leaves, rabbits, foxes, and deer peered out, their eyes wide with concern. The animals shared a bond with Daphne, one built on years of laughter and companionship. They understood her spirit, her desire to be free, and they were determined to help. The rabbits, swift and nimble, darted alongside her, urging her on. "This way, Daphne. Follow us," they squeaked, their tiny hearts racing with the thrill of adventure. The deer, elegant and graceful, emerged from the thicket, their presence calm and reassuring. They stood tall, watching with gentle eyes as she passed. "You are strong, dear one," one whispered softly. "Trust in your heart. We will create a path for you." They moved in unison, their hooves creating a rhythm that resonated in the air. Together, they formed a protective circle around her, guiding her through the underbrush. The sounds of the forest seemed to fade, leaving only the steady beat of their hearts, united in their mission to protect the beloved nymph. As Daphne ran, the trees and the animals worked in harmony. Branches bent low to clear her path, while flowers bloomed in her wake, their petals opening wide as if cheering her on. She could feel the support of nature surrounding her, a powerful force of love and friendship that fueled her determination. The world around her shimmered with possibility, each rustle of leaves a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. But the most unexpected allies emerged from the very heart of the forest, the spirits of the winds. They whirled through the trees, a chorus of whispers that danced with her. "We will carry your voice to the skies," they sang, their laughter mingling with the rustling leaves. "With our breath, you can soar above the chase." The winds enveloped her in a gentle embrace, lifting her spirits even as her feet raced along the ground. With every gust, she felt lighter, her heart filled with hope and courage. The clouds overhead began to shift, forming shapes that seemed to echo her emotions. A swift breeze swirled around her, carrying the scent of blossoms and fresh earth, wrapping her in a comforting hug. "Run, dear nymph, run," the winds whispered, their voices like a melody that urged her onward. In that moment, Daphne knew that the entirety of nature was rallying behind her, lending her strength and support. With each step, she felt the rhythm of the forest sync with her heartbeat, a pulse that quickened in response to Apollo's pursuit. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows that danced around her. The golden light became a guide, illuminating her path as if the very sun was blessing her flight. It felt as if the universe was conspiring to protect her, every element working together to ensure her escape. But just as hope surged within her, doubt crept in. What if she couldn't outrun Apollo? What if his desire was too strong? It was a thought that chilled her, but the creatures and spirits surrounding her rallied closer, sensing her uncertainty. They reminded her of the power within herself, the connection she had with the world around her. She was not merely a nymph fleeing a god, she was a part of this living, breathing tapestry of nature. And in that moment of clarity, she understood that she carried their spirit within her. As the pursuit continued, the forest transformed into a blur of color and sound. Daphne ran with renewed energy, her heart pounding in time with the beat of the earth. The animals scampered alongside her, their eyes wide with excitement and fear. The river gods beckoned her to the safety of their waters, while the trees offered shade and solace. Every element of nature conspired to help her escape, each ally playing a vital role in this sacred dance. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the landscape, Daphne felt the strength of her allies surround her. The woodland creatures became her companions in this flight, the river gods her protectors. Together, they forged a bond that transcended words, a promise to stand by her side. The beauty of the forest was no longer just a backdrop, it was a testament to the love and friendship that fueled her journey. With a final burst of energy, Daphne sprinted forward, her heart soaring. She was not merely running, she was embracing the essence of life, the spirit of nature that coursed through her veins. The chase was not just a race against Apollo, it was a celebration of her independence, a testament to the power of love found in friendship and the bonds of nature. Every step she took resonated with the heartbeat of the earth, reminding her that she was never alone. Apollo's heart thundered in his chest, echoing like a drumbeat in the silence of the forest. Each stride he took felt heavy with longing, every breath he drew filled with an urgency that spurred him forward. The sun hung low in the sky, casting an orange glow through the trees, but all he could see was Daphne, slipping through the shadows just out of reach. This was not merely a chase, it was an all-consuming fire igniting within him, pushing him to pursue her with relentless fervor. Desire had taken root in Apollo's soul the moment he first laid eyes on her, his heart flipping like a coin caught in a whirlwind. He remembered that first sight of her, standing amidst the blooming flowers, her laughter floating through the air like a sweet melody. She was a vision of pure beauty, a wildflower dancing in the wind, and he was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. But now, that initial spark had turned into a raging inferno, consuming every thought he had. There was no turning back, the desire had woven itself into the very fabric of his being. With each heartbeat, Apollo felt the intensity of his pursuit intensifying. He could not bear the thought of losing her. He had faced countless monsters and challenges in his life, but this was different. This was not a battle against an enemy, this was a battle for love, and love felt far more treacherous. It was a force that pulled him closer to her, urging him onward, even as Daphne's fear pushed her away. The contrast between their feelings felt like a chasm, an impossible divide that he was desperate to bridge. As he sprinted through the underbrush, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Why does she run? He wondered. What frightens her so? The questions tumbled over one another, each more urgent than the last. He had always been revered as a god, respected and admired by all who laid eyes on him. But Daphne was different. She was not impressed by his divinity or his gifts. She valued her freedom above all. That made her all the more enchanting and all the more elusive. The thrill of the chase, the thrill of her rejection, was intoxicating. It sparked something primal in him, something that clawed at his heart. The forest felt alive around him, every leaf rustling with whispers of encouragement as he pushed forward. Yet, the weight of desperation was heavy on his shoulders. The deeper he ventured, the more he realized the profound emptiness that threatened to swallow him whole. Apollo had tasted love before, flings, infatuations, but this was something else entirely. This was a passion that wrapped itself around him like a vine, squeezing tighter with each moment he spent chasing Daphne. Her flight became his obsession, her laughter the sweetest music, and every moment she eluded him added to his frustration. Suddenly, a vision of her sprang to his mind, unbidden. He could see her golden hair, wild and untamed, flowing like sunlight as she dashed through the trees. The way she moved, so free and unburdened, ignited a fierce longing within him. He imagined her laughter echoing off the trunks of the trees, teasing him, enticing him, pulling him deeper into the woods. But with every step he took, she seemed to slip further away, like sand through his fingers. The thought sent a pang of desperation through his heart. Would he ever reach her? Could he ever convince her to stop running? He pushed harder, his legs pumping with determination, every muscle screaming in protest. Sweat dripped down his brow, mingling with the dirt and leaves that clung to him. The forest closed in around him, shadows stretching like fingers as the sun dipped lower in the sky. But Apollo was undeterred. He would not allow fatigue to slow him down. The thought of her, of Daphne, kept him going. It filled him with a strength he didn't know he possessed. Yet, as the distance between them widened, despair began to creep in. What if she truly wanted nothing to do with him? The thought struck him like a thunderbolt, freezing him in place for just a moment. Apollo had faced countless battles, but this was a fight he couldn't win with brute force. He couldn't charm her with words alone. He had to make her feel something, anything. But how could he break through her defenses when she was so determined to keep him at bay? He could almost hear her voice in the breeze, a soft whisper filled with uncertainty. "Leave me be, Apollo," it seemed to say. "You do not understand." That was the key, wasn't it? He needed to understand her, to show her that his love was not a cage, but an open door to something beautiful. But every moment she ran felt like a step further from that goal. The intensity of his feelings surged, threatening to overwhelm him. He felt as if he were caught in a tempest, his heart torn between the exhilaration of the chase and the despair of rejection. A thought pierced through the chaos. What if she was right to run? What if I was wrong to pursue her? For a brief moment, doubt clouded his mind, but it was swiftly followed by an even stronger feeling. The desire to love, to be loved, was a force that could not be ignored. It surged within him, lighting a fire that drove him onward. He had never backed down from a challenge, and he would not start now. Each moment of the chase turned into a blend of hope and heartbreak, a tumultuous storm that raged within him. Apollo realized that his pursuit of Daphne was not just about him, it was about her, too. It was about showing her that love could be gentle, that it could nurture rather than stifle. The fear in her eyes tore at his heart, and he longed to be the one who could put an end to that fear, to be the one she could trust. But how could he show her that? The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, a beautiful backdrop to his growing desperation. The shadows lengthened, and the chill of night began to creep in, but he could not stop. He refused to give up on Daphne. She was worth every effort, every heartbeat. Her independence was not a barrier, it was a challenge, and he was determined to meet it. As he pressed on, he felt the pulse of the earth beneath him, the rhythm of nature urging him forward, whispering promises of hope amidst the turmoil. With each passing moment, the line between desire and desperation blurred. Apollo was not just chasing Daphne, he was chasing a dream, a possibility, a future that felt just beyond his grasp. And though the forest echoed with Daphne's fleeing footsteps, it also held the whispers of hope, urging him onward, promising that love could triumph over fear if he only held on a little longer. Daphne's heart pounded like the wings of a trapped bird, every beat echoing through her chest as she dashed deeper into the forest. She could hear Apollo's footsteps behind her, relentless, never slowing, always getting closer. The whisper of the wind brushed against her face, cooling her flushed cheeks as she tried to clear her mind. Yet, despite the coolness of the air, her skin burned with an internal fire, a fire she both feared and could not quite understand. In that hurried flight, Daphne's thoughts became a storm of confusion, questions, and something else, something so fleeting she dared not name it. She was afraid, yes, but there was something else mingling with the fear, a feeling she struggled to push away, as elusive as sunlight slipping through leaves. It was the feeling of someone seeing her, not just her figure, but her essence, her spirit, her freedom. And that thought unnerved her. She had always held her independence close, her wild spirit unbound by expectations, by attachments, by love. Love meant surrender, didn't it? Love meant giving up herself, her autonomy, and the thought of being bound terrified her. Yet, in Apollo's gaze, she saw a warmth she had never felt before, an intensity that made her heart race. Why couldn't he let her be? What was it about her that he desired so desperately? Daphne tried to steady her breath, tried to steady her thoughts. She felt like a leaf caught in a river, pulled in currents beyond her control, and no matter how she struggled, she couldn't escape. She had chosen a life without attachments, a life devoted to the forest, to nature, to the serenity that came with solitude. And yet, the yearning look in Apollo's eyes lingered in her mind like an echo, a pull she couldn't ignore. She felt as though something inside her was shifting, an internal struggle she couldn't quite contain. Every step, every breath, every pulse in her veins seemed to taunt her. She had never let herself think of love as anything more than a binding force, something that would take from her rather than add. But now, for the first time, she wondered if there was more to it, something beyond the tales she had heard, the warnings she had taken to heart. Could love be different than she had imagined? But no, she couldn't let herself be trapped by something she didn't understand. She was Daphne, untamed and free, and she would not lose herself to anyone, not even to a god. Her father, the river god Peneus, had often warned her about the gods' whims, their powers, their obsessions. They do not understand what it means to be mortal, he'd tell her. They do not live in the same world as we do, child. She had taken his words to heart, choosing to shun love, to stay wild and whole. But now, as Apollo's pursuit grew nearer, she felt torn. She felt as if there was a chasm within her, one side pleading to flee, to escape, and the other urging her to stop, to look into those eyes one more time, to let herself feel something other than fear. But could she? Could she let herself surrender to this feeling? Her mind whirled, searching for answers she didn't have. She wanted to keep running, to disappear into the woods, to lose herself so completely that Apollo could never find her. But her heart whispered something different, something that made her hesitate. It was as if her own soul was pulling her in two directions, tearing her apart. What was she to him? A mere mortal, a fleeting beauty, a wild spirit he longed to tame? Daphne's pride flared at the thought, and she pushed herself to run faster, her feet pounding against the forest floor as if she could outrun not only Apollo but her own heart as well. She did not want to be someone's prize, someone's possession. And yet, Apollo's eyes held no malice, no conquest. There was only a longing, a yearning, a tenderness she could barely comprehend. The forest around her felt as though it shared in her turmoil. The branches reached out like arms, as if they, too, wanted to hold her, to protect her from this powerful feeling that chased her so relentlessly. The birds fell silent as if sensing her distress, and the wind softened as if to comfort her. She had always found peace in nature, a sanctuary in the wilderness, but now even the trees seemed to hum with the weight of her conflict. In the moments when she dared glance back, she caught glimpses of him, his eyes searching for hers, his face filled with a desperation that mirrored her own confusion. And in those fleeting seconds, she felt her resolve begin to crumble. She could sense his longing, his need, and it stirred something within her, something she could not bear to acknowledge. She wanted to be strong, to resist, to stay true to her ideals, yet the intensity of his gaze made her feel like the center of a world she had never known, a world filled with warmth and vulnerability. How could something so terrifying also feel so beautiful? The thought rippled through her, leaving her shaken. She knew she should run faster, should call upon every ounce of her strength to escape. But her own heart felt like a traitor, whispering things she did not want to hear, urging her to stop, to let go of her fear, to embrace this feeling that had both terrified and intrigued her. And so, she ran, not just from Apollo, but from herself, from the feeling she didn't want to understand, from the ache in her chest that pulsed with every breath. She was caught in a web of her own making, a web woven from the fear of love and the undeniable pull of something far stronger than she had ever known. It felt like her very soul was being pulled apart, torn between the freedom she cherished and the haunting allure of surrender. Apollo's voice echoed through the trees, calling her name, soft yet filled with the weight of his own longing. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the sound wash over her, feeling it settle into the cracks of her heart. She wanted to hate him for making her feel this way, wanted to resent him for chasing her, for refusing to let her go. But instead, all she felt was a sadness so profound it nearly brought her to her knees. The struggle within her grew fiercer, a battle between reason and emotion, between what she had always known and what she had never dared to dream. She wanted to stay free, to remain untamed, but she also longed, perhaps for the first time, to be seen, truly seen, by someone who cared. And that thought, that terrifying, beautiful thought, kept her running, kept her fleeing even as her heart cried out for something else entirely. And so Daphne continued to run, her feet carrying her further into the forest, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and longing. She was a nymph torn between two worlds, caught in the tides of her own heart, a heart she had kept locked away until now. But with each step, with each beat of her heart, she felt herself slipping further into a conflict that she could no longer ignore, a conflict that would change her forever. Daphne's breath came in short, shallow gasps, her legs trembling beneath her as she pushed herself to keep running, keep going, even when every ounce of her strength felt like it was slipping away. Her vision blurred with tears, yet she didn't dare look back. She could feel him, sense Apollo's presence growing closer, like a warmth on the back of her neck that would not relent. Every step made her desperation deepen, her heart pounding as if it, too, were pleading with her to find a way out of this inescapable chase. She had run with everything she had, weaving through the trees that had always offered her shelter, feeling the soft earth beneath her feet, a place that once meant safety now feeling like it, too, was slipping away. Her body was at its limit, her lungs burning, and her heart was a storm of fear and sorrow. As her steps slowed, the weight of inevitability began to settle over her. Daphne knew, with an ache that seemed to rise from her soul itself, that she couldn't outrun him. She could feel the strength in her limbs fading, and for the first time, she felt truly powerless. The forest, her eternal sanctuary, now seemed vast and silent, as if it too held its breath, waiting to see what she would do next. Her thoughts came in waves, crashing one after another, a painful awareness dawning on her with each beat of her heart. This was not just a chase. It was something far deeper, something that reached into the core of who she was and demanded a part of her that she could never give. Her chest tightened, and she felt the weight of her own helplessness wrap around her like a vice. She had always loved her freedom, her life among the trees, the quiet solitude that allowed her to be whole within herself. The thought of losing that, of surrendering it to another, even to Apollo, with all his beauty and strength, was a sacrifice she couldn't bear. Every fiber of her being cried out to remain as she was, unbound, untouched, a spirit of the forest that could not be caged. She could see the light dimming as her world began to narrow down to one unavoidable truth: she would never be able to escape Apollo's desire. In that moment, Daphne felt something shift within her, a decision forming, rising like a wave she couldn't control. She knew, then, what she had to do. It wasn't a choice, really, but the only way to keep her spirit whole, to protect the essence of who she was. Daphne could feel her father, the river god Peneus, close by, his presence like a steady force beneath the surface of her thoughts. She closed her eyes, feeling the silent strength of the earth beneath her, her hands brushing against the rough bark of a nearby tree, as if seeking comfort, a final goodbye. "Father," she whispered, her voice a fragile plea carried on the wind. "Please, save me. Take this form from me if it means I can remain free. Let me become part of the forest I have always loved." And with that, she felt a sense of calm wash over her, a strange peace settling in as her heartbeat slowed, as if her very body knew that her request had been heard. She wasn't escaping, not really. She was choosing a life, a different life that held all the beauty of her freedom and none of the fears of being bound to something she could not bear. As her words fell into the air, Daphne felt an almost imperceptible shift in her body, a tingling that began in her fingertips and crept up her arms, spreading warmth and stillness in its wake. Her hands felt heavy, no longer soft and supple, but something else, something rooted and eternal. She looked down, her breath catching as she watched her fingers meld with the wood, her skin blending into the rough, cool bark that had always been part of her world. The change was gentle at first, a slow transformation that felt like sinking into a familiar dream. Her legs felt heavy, no longer made for running, and instead grew still, her feet sinking into the earth, rooting her to the spot. She felt the strength of the forest flood her veins, each fiber of her being becoming part of something older, something that pulsed with the rhythm of life itself. She was letting go of flesh, of bone, of all the things that had held her to her human form. She felt no fear, only a bittersweet sorrow, a silent farewell to the part of her that would forever be lost in the woods as she became part of them. Her arms rose as if of their own accord, stretching skyward, reaching to the heavens with a grace that was no longer her own. Her hair, her once free, flowing hair, felt lighter, and as the wind caught it, she felt it become something else, soft and green, a cascade of leaves that rustled softly in the breeze. Daphne's face lifted to the sky, her gaze unfocused yet filled with a sense of awe as she felt her final human breath leave her, carried away like a whisper on the wind. Apollo's footsteps drew closer, the sound fading as her ears turned into something different, something that didn't need sound to feel the world around her. She felt him arrive, his presence warm and pulsing with a need that lingered even as her own consciousness began to slip into the eternal quiet of the forest. There was a sense of stillness, a moment frozen in time as Apollo reached out, his fingers brushing against her rough bark, his touch gentle but filled with the sadness of knowing he could never hold her as he wished. She could feel his sorrow, the ache of his own yearning, and though she had no voice, no words to offer him, she felt a quiet sadness for the pain her choice had brought him. But in the end, she was at peace. She was rooted, grounded, and free in a way she had never known. No longer mortal, no longer a spirit bound by flesh, she was a part of the very essence of nature, her soul woven into every leaf, every branch, and every whisper of the wind that rustled through her new form. As the transformation settled in, as her awareness faded into the vastness of the forest, Daphne felt only the quiet fulfillment of a choice that had kept her spirit whole. She had escaped, not through flight or through resistance, but by becoming what she had always loved. In the end, she had found a way to remain true to herself, a way that allowed her to be both still and free, forever a part of the forest's eternal embrace. Daphne's heart raced as she stumbled through the forest, her legs weak, her breath catching with every frantic step. The world around her seemed to blur, as if the trees themselves were pressing in, holding their breath, watching her flee from the golden god who pursued her so relentlessly. The rustling of leaves mingled with the sound of her heartbeat, and the once familiar forest felt vast and foreign, no longer a place of refuge. Exhaustion weighed on her, and she felt her strength slipping away, like water trickling through her fingers. In her mind, there was only one name, one faint hope that flickered in the dark. She thought of her father, the river god Peneus, his presence a constant comfort to her since she was a child. She had grown up beside the cool, flowing waters of his river, always feeling protected by his gentle, unyielding strength. He was a god of the earth, of the deep-running streams and secret springs, his power quiet but unbreakable. Now, as she felt her freedom slipping away, her soul cried out to him, a desperate plea rising within her as if he were the only force in the world that could save her. With a gasp, Daphne's voice broke the silence. "Father," she cried, her voice trembling with fear and desperation. "Help me, please, don't let him take me." Her words were like the echoes of a heartbeat, raw and filled with the terror of what lay behind her, of the inevitable capture that would shatter her spirit. She could feel Apollo's presence closing in, a wave of warmth and energy that was as alluring as it was terrifying. His desire bore down on her like the midday sun, relentless, unyielding, and inescapable. The world around her seemed to grow silent, the trees bending as if listening, the wind pausing in its path. Daphne's bare feet dug into the earth, grounding her in her final moments as herself. She closed her eyes, reaching out not with her hands, but with her heart, a silent call that felt as natural as breathing. It was a plea not just for safety, but for the preservation of everything she was, everything she loved about herself. She couldn't give in, not now, not ever. To belong to anyone was to lose herself completely, and that, she knew, was a price too high to pay. In that fragile moment, she felt it, a stirring in the earth beneath her feet, a whisper in the air that seemed to answer her call. The ground beneath her softened, and the air grew cool and heavy, filled with the scent of water and moss. She felt a presence beside her, as though she were once again standing beside the riverbank where she had spent her childhood. There was no figure to see, no hand to reach out and hold, but she felt her father's essence surround her, a strength unlike any she had ever known. A sudden wave of calm settled over her, easing her fear and filling her with a fierce, resolute peace. Her father was there, in the earth, in the water, and in every leaf that shivered on the trees around her. She knew he understood her without words, that her silent plea had reached him as clearly as if she had spoken 1,000 times. In that moment, Phineas became her sanctuary, her final hope, a quiet force ready to protect his daughter in the only way he could. With an almost imperceptible shift, she felt herself beginning to change, her body responding to his will. Her feet, grounded in the soft earth, felt a new heaviness, a pull that went deeper than her bones. It was as if the earth itself were calling her back, inviting her to be part of it. Her hands, which had trembled with fear, now grew still, her fingers lengthening, taking on a new strength that wasn't of flesh or bone. She felt her skin cool as if it were blending with the roughness of bark, and her heart, which had pounded with desperation, began to slow, matching the gentle rhythm of her father's river. Though her transformation was only beginning, Daphne's mind filled with a sudden, overwhelming gratitude. She knew what her father was giving her, not just a means of escape, but a way to remain true to herself, to everything she held sacred. She was becoming one with the land she loved, her spirit blending with the ancient forest that had always been her refuge. Her essence would be woven into the leaves and branches, her life carried forward in the gentle sway of the trees and the quiet rustle of leaves. As her vision blurred, she felt Apollo draw near, his presence sharp and vibrant, his breath close enough that she could feel its warmth on her cool skin. She could sense his confusion, the surprise in his gaze as he watched her transformation unfold before him. She was slipping away from his reach, becoming something he could never possess, and she felt a bittersweet sense of peace in knowing that she would remain forever untamed, forever free. In those final moments of awareness, Daphne felt her father's strength surround her like an embrace, his love and protection flowing through her like the river itself. He had answered her call, had heard the raw, vulnerable cry of her soul, and had given her a gift that went beyond life or death. She was becoming more than herself, her spirit rooted in the ancient soil, her voice carried in the rustling leaves that would forever whisper of her story. Her senses grew quiet, fading into the soft hum of the earth and the gentle song of the forest around her. Daphne no longer felt the pounding of her heart or the burn of her lungs. She felt only a vast, endless stillness, an eternal connection to the life she had chosen over captivity. Her father's love had saved her in the truest way, preserving her essence within the very fabric of the forest, her spirit woven into every leaf and branch. In her silence, she could feel Apollo's sorrow, his realization that she was beyond his grasp, yet she felt no regret. She was safe now, held within the embrace of her father's world, a part of the ancient forest that would stand long after memory faded. She had found a peace that was as steady and enduring as the river itself, a sanctuary where she could rest, free from the chains of desire. And in that eternal quiet, Daphne became a symbol of everything she had cherished, wild, beautiful, and forever untouchable. Daphne felt the world shift beneath her, a sensation unlike any she had ever known. The forest air that had once danced on her skin now began to press against her, melding with her flesh, her bones, her very soul. She could feel her heart racing, not with fear, but with the profound realization that this was the end of one life and the beginning of something else, something her spirit had chosen even if her mind could barely comprehend it. She sensed the warmth of Apollo still reaching for her, the unrelenting pull of his desire hanging in the air like an invisible thread. His touch was close enough to feel, but she was already slipping away from him. She had called upon the only force that could protect her, her father's power rising from the earth like a sheltering embrace. In that instant, she felt herself surrendering to him, her body responding to his will, her spirit merging with the pulse of the earth beneath her feet. Her legs grew heavy first, rooted to the ground as if bound by the ancient soil. It was a strange and comforting weight, pulling her down, wrapping her in a sense of belonging deeper than anything she had ever felt. She felt the sharp edges of her fears fade, replaced by a calm strength, a steadiness that coursed through her like the rivers of her father's domain. Her feet fused with the earth, her toes extending like roots, burrowing into the soil, intertwining with the life that lay hidden beneath the surface. She felt herself connecting to something vast and timeless, a memory as old as the trees around her, and in that bond, she found peace. Her heartbeat, so frantic moments before, began to slow, matching the steady rhythm of the land. The rush of her blood softened, turning into the quiet hum of sap winding through her veins. Her legs, no longer flesh, hardened as they stretched and twisted, becoming the sturdy base of a trunk, her skin roughening to bark. Each change brought her closer to the essence of herself, grounding her not in Apollo's gaze, not in any mortal fear, but in her own fierce spirit. Her arms began to rise, no longer arms, but slender branches, reaching skyward as if to hold the stars. She felt her fingers stretch, becoming delicate twigs, growing lighter and thinner with every breath. Her skin transformed, the softness fading into the coarseness of bark, strong and unyielding, its touch protective, like her father's spirit enveloping her. She felt leaves sprouting from where her hair had once cascaded, emerald green and vibrant, each one a tiny fragment of her soul, fluttering gently in the wind that had witnessed her transformation. But it was in her heart that the greatest change of all took place. The emotions that had surged within her, the fear, the desperation, even the fierce determination, began to settle, to quiet, until there was nothing left but a profound stillness. She felt herself release every tether, every fragment of fear, every trace of sorrow. She was letting go of the world she had known, of the memories of laughter and sunlight filtering through leaves. She was letting go of her own form, the shape that had once bounded her spirit, her hopes, her dreams. Her heart transformed, just as surely as her body, into something beyond the human pulse, something connected to the eternal rhythm of the forest around her. Apollo stood before her, his golden light touching her bark, his gaze filled with disbelief and sorrow. She felt his hand graze the roughness of her trunk, but she was beyond his reach now, beyond the limits of touch, of ownership. In his eyes, she saw his regret, his longing, but she felt no bitterness. There was only an abiding peace, a quiet satisfaction that she had chosen her fate and that she had been granted the freedom she cherished, not in flight, but in stillness. The wind swept through her leaves, carrying with it the whispers of her new existence. She was no longer Daphne, the nymph who ran, the girl with laughter like the rustling of rivers, the one who had once feared the heart's ensnaring bonds. She was something greater, her spirit woven into every leaf, every branch, her essence spread through each root that burrowed deep into the soil. Her life was now one with the life of the forest, her being mingling with the quiet mysteries of the earth, her voice joining the eternal chorus of the trees. As the sun set, casting its final rays over the forest, Daphne stood tall, her branches lifting to the fading light, her leaves catching the last warmth of day. She felt the strength of the laurel, its quiet endurance, its unbreakable grace. She was a part of the earth, the air, the wind that sang through her branches. She was eternal, untouched by time or desire, unburdened by the ache of longing. She had found a freedom beyond movement, a strength beyond resistance, a life beyond the bounds of the human heart. And in that quiet moment, as the first stars appeared in the sky above, Daphne felt an unbreakable peace wrap around her, filling her with a joy she had never known. She had become something eternal, something beautiful, something free. Apollo stood frozen, his heart hollow and heavy as he gazed at the laurel tree that had once been Daphne. Every fiber of his being strained to reconcile what lay before him, the girl he had pursued, the one who had run through the fields and shadows, now standing still, her spirit locked within bark and branches. His outstretched hand trembled as he touched her roughened surface, a reality both beautiful and unbearable. This tree was Daphne, and yet it was not. He brushed his fingers across the laurel's leaves, soft and vibrant, filled with life yet stripped of the warmth that had filled her gaze, the spark that had once made her flesh and blood. The silence between them now was profound, a silence that swallowed all the words he would have said, all the promises he would have made. Every leaf seemed to speak to him of her, yet held her so far from his reach, transforming his longing into a sharp ache that would forever be unfulfilled. His desire, once so fierce and relentless, lay defeated. His pursuit, that force of love, lust, and passion, now had no direction, no purpose. The fire within him, the yearning that had driven him forward with each step, had nowhere to go. His longing, once fueled by visions of her hair flowing in the wind and her laughter echoing through the trees, turned inward, twisting his soul into something heavy and raw. She was here, just an arm's length away, yet she was gone from him forever. Apollo's chest tightened as he thought back on the chase, each memory haunting him. He had never considered the pain of wanting someone who could not want him back, never understood the bitterness of a love that could not be shared. She had run from him with such desperation, and in his need, he had not stopped to question her cries, her fear. In his eagerness, he had failed to see the torment in her eyes, the sheer terror that she felt. And now, she had escaped him, yet at a cost so unimaginable that it shook him to his core. A breeze stirred the laurel's leaves, and they rustled like whispers in the quiet. Apollo pressed his hand more firmly against the trunk, as if willing himself to feel her heartbeat within, a heartbeat that was no longer there. He closed his eyes, and in his mind, he could see her as she once was, her laughter, her graceful movements, her freedom. How he had longed to be the one who captured her heart, to see her smile directed at him. But she had chosen a fate without him, a fate he could neither change nor challenge. In that choice, she had defied him more deeply than he had ever been defied, and yet he could not hate her for it. He could only grieve. A raw grief, bitter and consuming, began to fill the empty spaces within him. His love had burned like a flame, and now it flickered alone in the cold shadow of her absence. This loss was not one he could cure, not a wound that time could heal. This was Daphne's final answer, her last word, spoken not in voice but in her silence, and her transformation. She had chosen her own way, leaving him with nothing but memories of what could have been, 1,000 imagined moments that would never come to pass. Unable to bear the stillness, Apollo knelt at the base of the tree, resting his forehead against her trunk, his tears falling softly onto the ground. The great god, once so proud, so assured, felt himself small, powerless against the weight of his own sorrow. For the first time, he understood what it meant to feel truly alone, to yearn for someone who was forever out of reach. He would no longer hear her voice, see her face, or watch her move through the world as he had dreamt. The Daphne he had loved was gone, transformed into something beautiful yet unreachable, leaving him with nothing but her shadow and the memory of her defiance. With a heavy heart, he whispered to the laurel, his voice breaking with each word, "You are still beautiful, Daphne. You will always be beautiful." And as he spoke, he felt a new resolve forming within him, a desire not to forget, but to honor. She had taken root here in the earth, and so too would she take root in his memory, in his heart, for as long as he lived. He would make sure that the world knew her story, that her beauty would be celebrated, even if she would never be his. Her leaves would be his symbol, her branches his crown, and in that way, she would live on, a testament to the choice she had made, a choice to be free. The wind swept through her branches again, and as Apollo looked up, he saw her leaves glistening in the golden light. They seemed to shimmer with life, a life both full and distant, a life that belonged to the laurel and to the forest, not to him. There was a quietness in that moment, an acceptance. She had found her peace, and though he would carry the ache of her absence, he would honor her for the strength she had shown. She had been a nymph, but now she was something greater, something eternal, beyond the grasp of any god or mortal. As Apollo rose, he reached out one final time, taking a branch in his hand, feeling the gentle resilience of her spirit within. He broke off a single twig and held it to his lips, whispering a silent promise. This would be his way to remember her, his tribute to the one who had defied him and left him longing. He would carry a piece of her with him, a symbol of the love that could not be shared, the love that would forever haunt him. He knew that he would never again feel her presence as he once had, never again see her eyes light up with life. But in her transformation, she had achieved something timeless, a beauty beyond the fleeting nature of mortal or godly desires. And so, he placed the twig carefully within his robe, carrying her memory like a scar upon his soul, a scar that would forever remind him of the girl who chose freedom over love, silence over surrender. As he walked away, he knew that the forest would never be the same for him. Each tree, each leaf, each whisper of the wind would hold a piece of her memory, calling to him in the quiet hours of his days, reminding him of the love he could never hold. And though the ache would linger, Apollo could feel a quiet honor in his grief, a vow to remember her as she had been and as she had chosen to become. Daphne, now part of the earth, would live forever in his heart. Apollo stood, stunned, his heart breaking as he gazed at the laurel tree that had once been Daphne. The vibrant woman who had once run freely through the woods, laughing and light as air, was now lost to him, transformed by her own desperate choice. She was gone, forever out of reach. He could still feel her presence, but it was as if she had receded into a place beyond him, unreachable even by a god. His fingers traced the rough bark of the tree, its surface cool and unyielding where her warmth had once been. The bark felt like a barrier, holding her away from him, beyond his touch. He pressed his hand against it, half expecting to feel her pulse beneath the surface, but there was only silence. The Daphne he had loved, the one he had chased with a hunger that had burned inside him, was no more. He was left with a hollow ache that pierced through him, a wound that could not be healed by time or power. There was no anger left in him, only grief. The god who had once believed in his strength, in his ability to possess whatever he desired, now found himself crushed by this loss. Daphne's choice, her final refusal, left him feeling small, humbled, and deeply wounded. He felt an unfamiliar loneliness settle into his bones, a shadow that would linger no matter how many ages passed. His love for her had been fierce, consuming, but now it was met with an emptiness he could never have anticipated. Her transformation was a kind of victory, a testament to her strength and her will, but for him, it was an unbearable defeat. He saw in that tree the remnants of her spirit, her freedom, the unbreakable heart that would not bend even for God. She had chosen to become something eternal, something untouched by desire, and in doing so, she had shown him that some things could not be taken or claimed. As he knelt before her, Apollo's tears fell silently, each one a testament to the longing that would never be fulfilled, the love that had no outlet. He could feel his heart breaking over and over again as he thought of her laughter, her movement, the way she had filled the world with her vibrant life. Now, all of it was captured, locked within the branches and leaves, held in a form he could never touch. She was gone from him, and the weight of her absence left him breathless. In his sorrow, he spoke softly to the tree, his words filled with the pain of his unfulfilled love. "Daphne," he whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of her name. "You are still beautiful. You will always be beautiful." He could not hold her as he had longed to, but he would honor her. She would be his symbol, a part of him as enduring as his grief. The laurel's leaves whispered in the wind, as if responding to his words. He felt a strange comfort in that sound, a gentleness that soothed his aching heart even as it reminded him of what he could never have. Her choice had left him empty, but he could see now the purity of her spirit, the freedom she had fought to protect. She had sacrificed herself to remain unchained, and though it broke him, he could not resent her for it. Apollo's hands moved gently over the laurel's branches, and he broke off a small twig, lifting it to his lips as if it were a piece of her. He felt her presence within it, a reminder of the woman she had been, the one he would carry with him always. He tucked the twig into his robe, a memento of the love he could not hold but would never forget. This small part of her would be his memory of what had once been, of the girl who had chosen freedom over surrender. For the rest of his days, Apollo would carry this grief. He would wander through the forest, seeing her shadow in the leaves, feeling her spirit in the breeze. Every tree, every whispered rustle would bring her back to him, filling him with the bittersweet reminder of the love he could never fulfill. The ache would stay with him, a constant reminder of the beauty he had lost, the life he had chased and could never claim. In honoring her, he found a sense of peace, a vow to keep her memory alive. She would be the laurel that crowned him, the symbol of his longing, his loss, and his respect for her strength. He would wear her branches as a tribute to the girl who had shown him what it meant to be free, to choose one's own path, even in the face of desire. And so, as the days passed and the seasons changed, Apollo would return to the laurel tree, feeling her presence in the earth, in the leaves, and the soft murmur of the wind. He would stand in quiet reverence, honoring her decision, carrying with him the weight of his unfulfilled love, his unending grief, and the memory of the girl who had become eternal. In the heart of Greek culture, the laurel tree stood as a quiet yet powerful symbol, its leaves carrying stories of gods and heroes, love and loss, victory and immortality. It was not just a tree but a witness to the passion of Apollo and Daphne, rooted in the soil of their tale, embodying the soul of a woman who had chosen transformation over surrender. The laurel became far more than a plant. It was a living testament to freedom, strength, and an eternal victory, a victory of spirit and will. For the Greeks, the laurel was not simply foliage. Its branches, its green leaves, each carried a message, a reminder that victory in life is not always about triumph over others, but sometimes over oneself. It became a crown, a mark of honor for those who had proven their worth, not only in battle or athleticism, but in the endurance of their character and the purity of their intentions. The laurel wreath, once woven together, became a circle that linked the living with the eternal, creating a bond between the mortals who wore it and the gods who bestowed it. To think of the laurel is to feel the presence of Daphne herself, the free spirit who transformed into a symbol of resilience. Through her transformation, she became the tree that Apollo would forever cherish and wear, her memory woven into his being, her essence captured in every leaf he touched. The laurel was her story, preserved in a way that words could not convey. And for Apollo, it was a symbol of a love that transcended rejection and loss, a love that could not possess but could remember. The Greeks honored the laurel by crowning their greatest athletes and leaders with its branches, a gesture that whispered of endurance, purity, and the desire for more than worldly success. To be crowned with laurel was to be seen, not just for one's actions, but for one's heart and spirit, to be acknowledged as someone who had pushed past ordinary limits, embodying strength and dignity. In ancient Greece, the winners of the Olympic Games wore laurel wreaths, signifying not just a fleeting victory but a connection to the divine, a reminder that their achievements resonated beyond the earthly plane. It was not only warriors and athletes who found a symbol in the laurel. Poets and thinkers too felt the touch of the tree's significance, the leaves a mark of wisdom and creativity, as if they carried a fragment of Apollo's spirit. Apollo himself, god of music and poetry, saw in the laurel a bridge between beauty and sorrow, a bittersweet symbol that celebrated both the joy of creation and the weight of remembrance. The poets who wore laurels knew they were wearing more than leaves. They were carrying the legacy of a goddess's daughter, a woman who had made her own fate. And through the centuries, the laurel continued to hold its place, becoming a crown not just for those who fought battles with swords, but for those who fought the battles of the mind and spirit. It adorned the heads of emperors, reminding them that power must be tempered with humility, that true immortality lies not in control, but in leaving a legacy that others would honor. Even the Roman emperors, from Julius Caesar onward, wore the laurel, and it became a mark of both greatness and responsibility, a symbol of triumph tinged with the memory of the one who had given it its meaning. To wear the laurel was to accept not just honor but an unspoken connection to Daphne's choice, her unwavering spirit. Apollo's grief, his love, and his promise were woven into every wreath, reminding the wearer that true strength often comes with sacrifice. Every time Apollo looked upon the laurel, he saw her. Every time a victor wore it, they unknowingly honored her. In this way, Daphne lived on, her essence not only preserved in the tree but dispersed among all who bore the laurel's grain. The Greeks believed in the power of symbols to transcend human understanding, to tell stories where words failed. The laurel tree, with its unbroken leaves and enduring green, was more than an emblem of success. It was a mark of eternity, a whisper that true victory is untouched by time, that some stories live forever because they carry within them the pulse of a soul. It was Daphne's spirit that allowed the laurel to flourish, her life forever intertwined with the fate of all those who would seek to overcome, to reach beyond themselves. For Apollo, the laurel would forever be his connection to her, an unbreakable bond that could not be severed by loss or rejection. He could touch the leaves and feel her presence, sense her choice, her strength. The laurel gave him a way to honor her in a world that would never fully understand the depth of what they had shared and lost. It became the language of his love, his mourning, and his acceptance, a way to hold her close while letting her remain free. And in this symbol, she became a part of the world of gods and men alike, a timeless figure of strength and independence. Generations passed, but the laurel remained, a gentle, green reminder that some victories do not involve conquest but rather understanding, respect, and the resilience to stand true. It held a message of undying endurance, a belief that some things remain even when transformed. As a symbol of honor and respect, it connected the mortal with the divine, grounding achievements in something greater, something that recognized the nobility of the heart. Even today, the laurel stands as a testament to enduring strength, wisdom, and grace. It reminds us of those who have given their all, not for glory or fame, but for something far deeper. It is a mark of respect for life itself, for the power of choice, for the beauty of a spirit that cannot be contained. To look at the laurel is to see Daphne, to remember Apollo, to honor a story that speaks to the timeless truths of love, loss, and transformation. Through the laurel, Daphne's essence lives on, her spirit interwoven with the lives of all who reach for greatness and yet remember to honor the world around them. It stands as a tribute to the power of the soul, a legacy that whispers of ancient woods, unyielding love, and the undying beauty of choosing one's own path. In the silence that followed the chase, a haunting stillness settled over the grove. Daphne was no longer herself, transformed into a laurel tree, her slender limbs now branches, her flowing hair turned into leaves that trembled in the breeze. Apollo stood before her, breathless and hollow, knowing he would never hear her laughter or feel her warmth again. In his heart, he bore the weight of a love unfulfilled and a loss that would echo through eternity. Apollo's legacy became one marked by a sorrow he could never fully escape. This chase was not a victory, but a reminder of what he could not possess, of how love cannot be won by force. Each time he looked at her branches, he felt both pride and guilt, each leaf whispering of his affection and regret. She had become his laurel, a reminder of her spirit that he would carry forever. In this moment, Apollo's once bright and prideful heart dimmed, shaped by the understanding that love, when imposed, would transform and resist. Though a god of beauty and poetry, Apollo now knew the agony of loving something that would never love him in return. As he honored her, Apollo vowed that Daphne's memory would live on, not as a fleeting mortal life, but as something timeless, beyond the limits of a human lifespan. He pledged that the laurel, her new form, would be the crown for those who achieved greatness, so that she would be celebrated in every victory and every achievement that required courage and endurance. Through this, she became a symbol not only of beauty but of resilience, a reminder to all of a spirit that remained unbroken. Daphne's legacy, though entwined with Apollo's, was her own. She became the emblem of defiance, of a purity that could not be subdued or compromised. Through the ages, Daphne's spirit persisted, etched into every laurel wreath that crowned a victor's head, every poet who found inspiration under the branches of a laurel tree. Her story was whispered through time as a tale of courage, of a woman who dared to choose her own fate, even at the cost of her humanity. Her essence lived in the leaves that were plucked and woven into crowns, in the memory of those who aspired not only for victory but for truth and integrity. Every time a laurel leaf was pressed between the fingers of a hopeful soul, Daphne's legacy was revived, reminding the world of a love that she had to escape in order to remain free. For Apollo, the consequences of that pursuit were deeper than the ache of loss. He came to carry the laurel with reverence and sorrow, with a gentleness he had not known before. The once brash god of the sun, who pursued his desires without restraint, was now tempered by this experience, softened in a way that only a broken heart could manage. The laurel that adorned his head became more than a symbol of victory. It was a silent apology, a pledge to honor her independence, even if he could not possess her. Apollo's immortal heart now held a scar, a reminder of a love he would cherish but never know, of a pursuit that ended not in conquest but in transformation. Through time, Apollo's followers would see him not only as a radiant god of light but as one touched by longing, made wise by his own loss. His connection to the laurel became a tale told across lands, a story of love altered by respect and sorrow. He had immortalized Daphne, but in doing so, he had changed himself, learning to honor rather than capture, to cherish rather than chase. His pursuit of Daphne had left him with an eternal emblem of his own growth, and a reminder that even gods could learn the bounds of their power, could know the depths of yearning and regret. As Daphne's leaves rustled in the wind, they told a tale of both Apollo and Daphne, of a god whose passion was tempered and a spirit who chose freedom over love. Together, their legacies intertwined like the branches of her tree, each adding depth to the other's story. In this union of myth, Daphne's fierce independence found a counterpart in Apollo's remorseful reverence. The laurel would forever be their connection, a symbol not only of love's resilience but of a bond forged in loss, a remembrance that true love requires choice and cannot be captured. Their story was passed down through generations, each retelling breathing life into the legend of a chase that ended in transformation. For some, it became a story of warning, a reminder that love cannot be commanded, that the heart's desires must be met with patience and respect. For others, it was a tale of devotion, of a god who, though powerful, chose to cherish rather than conquer. And for those who wore the laurel, it was a symbol of courage, a tribute to the spirit of a woman who chose her own path, no matter the cost. Apollo and Daphne's intertwined fates echoed across centuries, their story woven into the fabric of human hearts and divine lore. The consequences of their pursuit lingered, each leaf a witness, each branch a testament to a love that could never be. Daphne's form, rooted in the earth, became a reminder of all who seek freedom, of all who honor their own choices. And for Apollo, each glimpse of her tree was a reminder of a love that, though unfulfilled, was eternal, shaping him, humbling him, teaching him the cost of desire and the strength in release. Their legacies would forever live side by side, Daphne, the unyielding, and Apollo, the transformed. In the heart of every laurel tree, in the hands of every soul who cherished victory, the memory of their story remained alive, a silent whisper of what it means to truly honor another's spirit. And thus, in the aftermath of the chase, both lives found their meaning, bound together not by possession but by memory, by a love that, in the end, found its own way to endure. In the heart of ancient Greek mythology, stories of love and transformation flowed like rivers, each one a stream of emotion and metamorphosis. They speak of gods and mortals, of love's yearning and of sacrifice, but at their core, they explore the mystery of change and the struggles of the human heart. The tale of Apollo and Daphne stands out, a love unfulfilled, forever marked by a tragic beauty and haunting sorrow. Yet, it's just one of many that delve into how love transforms, sometimes tenderly, often with heartache, always with an air of wonder. Daphne's story is one of independence, a spirit so rooted in her own freedom that it could not bend, even under the relentless pursuit of a god. Like many heroines in Greek mythology, she symbolizes resistance, her transformation into a laurel tree representing a profound act of self-preservation. The choice to change rather than yield was her own, a final, defiant stand. It reflects a universal yearning, to be true to oneself, to protect one's inner world even in the face of great sacrifice. The transformation of Daphne, though rooted in sorrow, finds beauty in the fact that it is her choice. She emerges as a tree, silent but eternal, free from the chains of Apollo's desire. There are echoes of this theme throughout Greek mythology. Take the story of Narcissus, a figure who, like Daphne, finds himself trapped in a different kind of love, one that is inward, consuming, and ultimately self-destructive. He becomes enchanted by his own reflection in a pool of water, unable to tear himself away, his longing turning him to stone as he reaches out for an image that can never love him back. Like Daphne, Narcissus transforms, his beauty locked away, becoming a flower by the riverbank, a symbol of vanity and a reminder of love that cannot thrive in self-absorption. Both Narcissus and Daphne tell of transformations born from an unwillingness or inability to give in to desire in the traditional sense, choosing instead a path that leads them away from those who long for them. Then there is the tale of Arachne, the mortal weaver who dared to rival the goddess Athena. Her transformation, unlike Daphne's, is a punishment rather than an escape. She becomes a spider, forever weaving, forever entangled in her own artistry. While Arachne's fate is less about love and more about defiance, her transformation speaks to the consequence of standing one's ground against the divine, a warning woven into the fabric of myth. Arachne, Narcissus, and Daphne each find themselves in situations where their pride, autonomy, or independence lead to irreversible change. Yet, the beauty of these tales is in their shared humanity, the raw emotions that, while expressed in extraordinary forms, feel close to our own lives and choices. Perhaps one of the most haunting love stories that parallels Daphne's is the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus, the legendary musician, ventures into the underworld to retrieve his beloved Eurydice. Unlike Daphne's story, this is a love shared by both, one strong enough to defy even death. Yet, like Apollo's pursuit, it ends in sorrow. As Orpheus leads Eurydice out of the underworld, he looks back too soon, losing her forever. His longing is palpable, a reminder that sometimes love's greatest agony is found in its inability to last. Just as Daphne slips away from Apollo, so too does Eurydice disappear from Orpheus's grasp. Their stories highlight a painful truth about love, its fragility, the ache of holding on, and the bittersweet realization that not all love can endure. Mythology is full of such transformations, where change becomes the only answer to an impossible situation. When Zeus's beloved Io is turned into a cow to save her from Hera's wrath, her transformation is a form of preservation, though it comes at a tremendous cost to her freedom. Like Daphne, Io's form is altered as a means of survival, reflecting the vulnerability of mortals under divine forces. These tales layer love with power and sacrifice, teaching that transformation, while often born from love, brings its own kind of beauty and resilience. And what of the gods themselves? Even they are not immune to transformation's bittersweet sting. The story of Persephone and Hades paints another image of forced separation and reluctant love. Persephone, taken to the underworld by Hades, must live part of the year away from her mother, Demeter. Her story is one of duality, of existing between worlds, a life forever split by forces beyond her control. Persephone's change is less physical than Daphne's, but her experience is no less profound. It is a reminder of how love, especially love entangled with power, can change everything: our bodies, our hearts, even the seasons themselves. Daphne's story, then, is more than just her own. It's one chapter in a greater narrative of transformation that spans across time and myths. Each story is a variation on the themes of love and loss, freedom and fate, each one painting a picture of the human soul's resilience. Transformation, in Greek mythology, is never arbitrary. It is a response, a choice, or an act of defiance against forces too great to overcome. Through these tales, the Greeks gave voice to the complexities of love and desire, weaving them into unforgettable stories where passion often met its match in the desire for freedom. In the broader landscape of mythology, Daphne's transformation is a triumph as much as it is a tragedy. Her choice to become the laurel tree, forever rooted in the soil and free from Apollo's grasp, is a poignant declaration of self. It's a legacy that reminds us that love, though powerful, cannot command the heart's true desires. Daphne's transformation into the laurel is one of many that the ancients told, but her story resonates with an unwavering strength. It speaks to those who long to remain whole, those who resist the pull of a love that would change them beyond recognition. Through mythology, we find that love takes many forms: Narcissus's self-love that ultimately isolates him, Orpheus's devotion that slips through his fingers, Persephone's divided heart that transforms the earth itself. Each story reveals a new side of love, not just as a uniting force, but as one that can change, challenge, and redefine. And in each transformation, there is a message: the power of choice, the beauty in sacrifice, and the unyielding strength of the human spirit. Through Daphne and others like her, mythology immortalizes these emotions, giving us a way to see ourselves, our loves, and our losses in tales as old as time. Across centuries, the tale of Apollo and Daphne has inspired artists to capture the intense beauty, heartbreak, and transformation of their story. Each work, whether carved in marble, brushed on canvas, or written in poetic verse, reveals new layers of longing, resistance, and love that echo through time. As the story unfolds in each piece, we're reminded of how Daphne's flight and Apollo's relentless pursuit are woven into something eternally profound. A moment where desire and the quest for freedom clash in a way that is both haunting and unforgettable. Bernini's famous sculpture of Apollo and Daphne stands as one of the most evocative visual interpretations of this story. Carved with exquisite detail, it captures the precise moment of Daphne's transformation into a laurel tree, her legs turning to bark, her fingers stretching into leaves. The marble seems alive, the figures caught mid-movement, as though they are still breathing, still feeling. Bernini doesn't simply show two figures, he captures their last touch, the last glance, the final plea as Daphne's humanity slips away. Apollo's face is one of desperation, his hand just shy of her shoulder, reaching with all the yearning of unrequited love. But Daphne's face tells another story, one of determination and sadness. She gazes away from him, her body curling inward as she seeks refuge in nature, becoming one with the earth. In this sculpture, the hard coldness of marble melts into a softness, a vulnerability that leaves viewers entranced, standing in the presence of love that can never be fulfilled. Artistic expressions of Apollo and Daphne did not stop at sculpture. Painters brought their own brushstrokes of sorrow and beauty to the tale. In Nicolas Poussin's rendition of the scene, soft hues and gentle contrasts cloak Apollo's pursuit with an otherworldly light. Apollo's form is radiant, his golden hues a stark contrast to Daphne's cooler tones. She appears as if she is already slipping into another world, her face contorted with both fear and resolution. The lush greenery surrounding them envelopes the pair, as though nature itself is conspiring to shield Daphne, to help her escape. Poussin's painting allows us to feel the weight of her choice. Each brushstroke speaks of the earth's pull, of Daphne's longing for freedom, and Apollo's helplessness as he loses her forever. In literature, too, the story of Apollo and Daphne has found expression, each retelling diving into the souls of these ancient figures. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, the myth is recounted in verses that balance longing with despair, giving us a glimpse of Apollo's heartache as well as Daphne's resolute defiance. Ovid's words dance between the excitement of Apollo's love and the growing dread of Daphne's realization that she cannot escape. As her transformation begins, Ovid describes each moment with haunting clarity, her hair turning to leaves, her arms stretching into branches, her feet rooting into the soil. Through his words, we experience the wonder and tragedy of change, the irrevocable crossing of a line between mortal and immortal, between what was and what will always be. Poets across history have taken this myth and made it their own, finding new ways to express the same sense of unreachable beauty and loss. Rainer Maria Rilke, the German poet, echoed the sorrow of unfulfilled love in his verses, capturing the relentless yearning that pulses through Apollo's story. In Rilke's interpretation, we feel the agony of a love that is forced to watch, to witness the transformation of something beautiful slipping away, becoming part of the unreachable world of nature. Rilke's words pull us into Apollo's gaze, a lover who can only stand by helplessly as the one he adores becomes forever untouchable, rooted in her own choices. And as literature and art grew through centuries, new styles brought new perspectives. The Pre-Raphaelite painters, captivated by the myth's intense emotion, portrayed Daphne as a figure of tragic beauty, enveloped in nature's embrace. Their work often focused on her face and form, capturing the exact moment she chose transformation over surrender. With flowing colors and natural landscapes, they emphasized her beauty, making her one with the wildness of the forest. The leaves, vines, and branches become more than symbols, they become her armor, her freedom, allowing her spirit to exist beyond Apollo's reach. In each artistic interpretation, the myth of Apollo and Daphne finds a new life, revealing the timelessness of its themes. The struggle between desire and autonomy, the beauty and resistance, and the pain of unfulfilled love resonate across each medium. Artists from every era have explored these universal themes, and through their work, they have immortalized a moment that defies simplicity. Each version, whether in the sweeping lines of Bernini's sculpture or the haunting stanzas of poetry, brings us closer to the heart of the myth. The impact of the Apollo and Daphne myth extends beyond individual artworks. It has influenced entire artistic movements. During the Renaissance, artists sought to capture the human body and soul in their most vulnerable forms. Daphne's metamorphosis, her submission to nature rather than a god, became an image of purity and self-preservation that resonated deeply with Renaissance ideals. In the Baroque period, with its love for drama and emotion, Daphne's transformation symbolized the clash of powerful forces: love against freedom, God against mortal, pursuit against surrender. In modern times, the myth of Apollo and Daphne continues to inspire, reminding us of the eternal struggle between connection and independence. New forms of media, such as film and digital art, reinterpret the story, often focusing on the internal struggles of the characters rather than the visible transformation. Contemporary artists have used photography, digital animation, and even immersive experiences to explore the myth's emotional weight. Apollo and Daphne's story is no longer limited to canvas or sculpture. It lives in performances, installations, and reinterpretations that allow viewers to feel the pulse of their story in real time. This timeless tale, brought to life through countless artistic forms, serves as a powerful reminder that some stories are too universal to fade. The myth of Apollo and Daphne remains a testament to the beauty of unyielding love, the strength of individual choice, and the haunting sadness of paths that cannot converge. It exists not only in the myth itself, but in every stroke of paint, every chisel of stone, and every word penned to capture a fleeting moment that has somehow been made eternal. Through art, the love that was never meant to be remains forever in bloom. The story of Apollo and Daphne is more than a myth. It's a tale that echoes with questions that linger in the human heart. What is desire if it doesn't honor freedom? Can true identity withstand such longing? And when does the act of pursuit turn into a loss of self? In Apollo's unyielding chase and Daphne's desperate flight, we find profound reflections on love, autonomy, and the quest for self. Their story unfolds like a mirror, showing us a struggle so timeless that it leaves an ache in the soul, a reminder of our own battles with love, freedom, and identity. For Apollo, desire is a force that blinds him, driving him forward, filling him with a passion he cannot temper. His longing for Daphne overwhelms him, making him forget his own power, his own godly nature. It's as if, in loving her, he loses sight of who he truly is. His very identity seems consumed by this pursuit, as though the god of light and music is reduced to nothing more than a lover in anguish, desperate for a connection he cannot force. His story is a reminder of how easily desire can take over, making us believe that what we crave must be ours at any cost. Yet, in seeking to possess Daphne, Apollo finds himself helpless against her will, a will as steadfast as the mountains and rivers that give her strength. Daphne, on the other hand, symbolizes freedom in its purest form, a freedom so fierce it resists even the advances of a god. Her life, spent in harmony with nature, is a testament to her commitment to herself, to her own choices, unbound by the desires of others. Daphne embodies the courage to say no, to guard her identity even as her heart races with fear. Her refusal to yield to Apollo's love is not a rejection of love itself, but a declaration of her own sovereignty. She belongs to the wilderness, to the trees and rivers, to the life she has chosen. The forest becomes her sanctuary, a place where her essence is unbreakable, untouchable. Daphne reminds us that identity and freedom are intertwined, that to remain true to oneself sometimes requires sacrifices that others may never understand. As the story unfolds, Apollo and Daphne become symbols of conflicting forces: desire and autonomy, pursuit and resistance. Their collision speaks to the tension between wanting to connect and needing to remain oneself. Desire, after all, is a fundamental part of being human, a yearning that propels us toward others, towards dreams, and towards everything that gives life meaning. But desire without freedom, love that seeks to control, can shatter the spirit. In Daphne's flight and transformation, we are reminded that love must respect the boundaries of the beloved, must honor the soul's right to remain whole. There's a beautiful, tragic irony in the fact that Apollo, the god of wisdom, cannot see the damage his pursuit inflicts. His love, stripped of patience or empathy, becomes a destructive force. Daphne's resistance, her determination to keep her freedom, only strengthens his resolve. Each step she takes away from him sharpens his desire, making it burn brighter, even as her own fear grows. It's as if they are locked in a tragic dance, one that neither can escape without losing something precious. Apollo's pursuit is a reflection of how desire can overshadow our understanding, make us blind to the needs and wishes of others. His inability to accept Daphne's wishes reveals a flaw, a failing of love itself when it turns selfish and consuming. In transforming into a laurel tree, Daphne chooses freedom over her own form, becoming one with the natural world she loves. Her transformation is an ultimate act of self-preservation, a way to keep her spirit untarnished. Yet, in this choice, there is also a great loss, the surrender of her human identity to preserve the purity of her soul. She sacrifices everything to remain true to herself, and in that moment, Daphne becomes a symbol of resilience, a reminder that freedom is worth any price. Her metamorphosis speaks to the strength that lies in choosing oneself, even when the choice feels like an end. Daphne teaches us that identity is more than appearance, that it lives in the heart and spirit, and the quiet resolve that defines who we are. Apollo's reaction to her transformation is one of grief, but also reverence. His love, once forceful and unrelenting, shifts into something softer, more sacred. Realizing that he has lost her forever, he vows to honor her, to make her a symbol of glory and victory, immortalizing her memory. In doing so, he turns his desire into devotion, transforming his longing into a promise. It's as though he has finally understood the cost of his pursuit, the painful beauty of her sacrifice. His vow to cherish the laurel as his sacred tree becomes an act of love that respects her choice, even in absence. Apollo's grief speaks to the realization that love must sometimes let go, must honor the beloved's wishes, even if it means living with an ache that will never fade. The laurel itself, a crown of victory and triumph, becomes a symbol of Daphne's enduring spirit. It represents the harmony between desire and respect, between love and freedom. Through her sacrifice, Daphne becomes a part of the earth, a witness to eternity, living on as a reminder that identity is sacred, that love must embrace the freedom of the other. Her transformation gives Apollo a new understanding of love, a love that accepts, honors, and remembers. The story of Apollo and Daphne holds a mirror to the human soul, capturing the beauty and pain of desire, the necessity of freedom, and the courage it takes to remain true to oneself. It speaks to the complexity of love and the importance of balance, of knowing when to hold close and when to let go. Daphne's transformation, Apollo's grief, and the symbolism of the laurel tree each offer lessons that resonate far beyond their myth. This tale, one of pursuit and sacrifice, reminds us of the power of choice, of the beauty in resistance, and of the truth that love, to be real, must honor the beloved spirit above all else. In the ancient world, Apollo's presence was not just divine, it was woven into the very lives of those who sought wisdom, healing, and music in his name. Among the flickering lights of temple candles and under the golden warmth of the sun, people looked to Apollo as a protector and guide, the god who embodied light, prophecy, and harmony. In every corner of Greece, people brought offerings and prayers, believing he held the power to heal the body, inspire the mind, and bring peace to a restless heart. But among all the symbols tied to him, none was as cherished or revered as the laurel, a tree forever connected to Apollo's love for Daphne and a symbol as enduring as the god himself. The laurel, once a simple tree, became a sacred emblem, cherished and protected, a reminder of both Apollo's divine favor and his tragic loss. People would watch as priests and priestesses carefully plucked laurel leaves to honor Apollo, each leaf a memory of Daphne's transformation, each branch a tribute to Apollo's unyielding reverence. The laurel was more than just a symbol, it was a bridge between the world of mortals and the divine, a physical representation of a love that sought to honor, not possess. It reminded worshippers of Apollo's sacred vow, a promise to cherish Daphne's spirit eternally. And so, when they wore laurel crowns or saw them placed upon victors and heroes, they knew it was Apollo himself who blessed them, offering them a piece of his grace. In temples across Greece, the laurel's presence was everywhere, draped in doorways and woven into wreaths, a living reminder of Apollo's watchful eye. During festivals and sacred rituals, priests carried laurel branches to bless the people, sweeping the air with its scent, filling the space with a sense of calm and reverence. Every leaf whispered stories of Daphne, stories of love and freedom, of loss and eternal memory. Each festival dedicated to Apollo, whether at Delphi or other holy sites, was a chance for the people to feel closer to their god, to touch the leaves that once held his sorrow and to believe that his strength and protection could become theirs. The laurel's use extended beyond rituals of worship. It was woven into daily life, a plant known for its healing powers and soothing fragrance. People would place laurel branches near their beds, believing it brought them peace and kept harm away. Families gathered leaves to place in baths, letting its warmth comfort and strengthen them. The laurel wasn't just a plant, it was a blessing from Apollo himself, one that was believed to have the power to calm the mind, to soothe pain, to bring clarity to confusion. For those who suffered or ached, the laurel's scent was a silent promise that Apollo watched over them, that healing and peace were within reach. At Delphi, the heart of Apollo's worship, the laurel was held in especially high esteem. Priests and priestesses here were seen as the voices of Apollo, channeling his wisdom, and they always used laurel branches as their guide. The leaves were chewed, the smoke was inhaled, all in the hope that Apollo would send his visions through them, revealing his will to those who sought answers. Visitors who traveled to Delphi for guidance saw the laurel as a vessel for Apollo's voice, a gift from the god who watched over them, ready to offer light in their darkest hours. The significance of the laurel extended beyond religious spaces. It crowned the heads of athletes and victors in ceremonies that celebrated excellence and bravery. When warriors returned from battle, laurel wreaths awaited them, a mark of Apollo's blessing, a sign of their courage and strength. It wasn't simply a crown but a connection to something greater, a belief that they, like Apollo, were destined for something powerful, something lasting. Wearing a laurel wreath was a source of pride, a moment when they could feel as though Apollo's hand rested upon them, bestowing his favor and strength. Artists, poets, and musicians also felt Apollo's presence through the laurel, turning to the god for inspiration and enlightenment. When they wore the laurel, they sought his creative fire, his boundless energy, hoping that their work could touch the divine, that their words and songs would echo Apollo's voice. They felt that the laurel could bring their visions closer to perfection, that in honoring Apollo, they too might create something worthy of eternity. Musicians, especially, saw Apollo as their muse. With each note, each stroke of a lyre, they offered a tribute, seeking his approval and his guidance, hoping that their music might reach the heavens. The laurel held a special place not only in worship but in every heart that believed in Apollo's watchful presence. Every festival, every competition, every healing ritual was filled with this sacred grain, a token of both devotion and memory. To honor the laurel was to honor Daphne, the nymph who chose her freedom above all else, and Apollo, the god who learned to turn his sorrow into protection. This story, of love that transformed and endured, was renewed each time a branch of laurel was placed upon a head, each time a priestess invoked Apollo's name. In the laurel, the people of ancient Greece saw a symbol of the balance between strength and gentleness, of love that could grow even in sorrow. This was the heart of Apollo's worship, a reminder that true power lay not in possession but in reverence. The laurel's beauty reminded them of Daphne's grace, while its strength spoke of Apollo's resilience. It taught them that love could transform, that the spirit could endure beyond time and change. Through every leaf, every ritual, and every wreath, the people honored a god who carried both light and shadow, whose love gave birth to a symbol of strength and memory. The laurel was a gift that connected the mortal to the immortal, the earth to the divine, an everlasting reminder that Apollo's love, though sorrowful, was transformed into something eternal. Each time the laurel was used, it brought Apollo and Daphne's story to life again, touching every heart that saw it with the timeless beauty of love that respects and endures. The story of Apollo and Daphne, an ancient tale of yearning, transformation, and eternal reverence, finds itself alive today, echoing in the hearts of those who see beauty in unspoken love and strength in self-determination. Modern society, with all its complex views on relationships, independence, and the search for identity, finds new meaning in the myth. Daphne's choice, her refusal to surrender her freedom, and Apollo's deep, unquenchable desire to be close to her speak volumes to a world that still struggles with the balance of love and individuality. In today's culture, Daphne is often seen as a powerful figure of resilience and autonomy, her decision to transform a statement of self-sovereignty rather than escape. For many, she represents the strength to choose one's path, even if it means leaving behind everything familiar. This transformation resonates in a world where boundaries and consent are essential parts of relationships. Daphne's defiance and her final act are understood not only as a rejection but as an affirmation, a woman's right to her own life, to make choices that protect her inner peace. On the other hand, Apollo's pursuit is seen through a different lens today. In a world more conscious of the nuances in desire and respect, Apollo's unyielding passion for Daphne is viewed with a mixture of empathy and caution. His love, fierce and unrestrained, reflects the universal longing to connect, to love deeply and without limits. Yet, it also serves as a reminder that love without boundaries, without truly seeing the other person's needs, can become possessive, even harmful. Apollo's journey is as much a tale of his love for Daphne as it is about his need to understand that real love allows freedom. In his failure to grant Daphne the space she craves, he loses her forever, a loss that many see as a cautionary lesson in respecting the autonomy of the one you love. Daphne's transformation, her choice to turn into a laurel tree, resonates as a symbol of rebirth and enduring legacy. For those who have faced difficult decisions, who've walked away from relationships or commitments that no longer align with their true selves, Daphne's transformation is a powerful reminder of the courage it takes to seek freedom. The laurel, as her eternal form, symbolizes resilience and beauty, an embodiment of strength that grows quietly, unyielding, despite its softness. This resonates deeply with modern audiences who value personal growth and resilience, who see transformation as a necessary part of healing and liberation. Artists and writers today continue to interpret the tale, each adding new layers of meaning that reflect contemporary issues. In literature, Daphne's story is often portrayed as an inner journey of self-realization, a search for the essence of one's identity beyond the desires of others. Her escape, her final plea to the gods, speaks to a modern audience as a journey of self-preservation and empowerment. Apollo's role is frequently examined as a symbol of desire that struggles to understand true connection. Many reinterpret him as a complex character, a lover caught in the throes of unrestrained passion, needing to learn that love cannot flourish if it overpowers the other. In visual art, Daphne's transformation continues to captivate, each new depiction exploring the beauty and heartbreak of a love that cannot be fully realized. Artists focus on the moment she becomes a laurel, the instant she surrenders to a form that will grant her peace but deny her connection. This transformation is often rendered with haunting beauty, her face caught between serenity and sorrow as her human form slips away. Viewers see in Daphne's eyes the weight of choosing peace over passion, a theme that resonates with anyone who has made sacrifices to stay true to themselves. Apollo's grief, his undying love for Daphne even after her transformation, speaks to the modern heart as a story of unfulfilled desire and learning to let go. Today's audiences see Apollo's reaction as a testament to the depth of longing and the necessity of respecting someone's choice, even if it means the loss of a dream. His act of honoring the laurel tree, vowing to keep Daphne close through memory and reverence, echoes the idea that true love, in its purest form, respects even the distance it might need to keep. The laurel, once a symbol of victory, has taken on layers of meaning in modern culture. No longer just a mark of success, it represents quiet resilience and the strength to endure. It has become a tribute to those who have chosen their own path, those who've had the courage to change themselves when no other escape seemed possible. The laurel is seen as a tribute to survival, to the beauty in self-preservation, and the strength it takes to reclaim one's identity when love tries to pull it away. In film and popular media, the story has inspired interpretations of love that don't conform to traditional expectations, presenting relationships where respect for autonomy is valued over possession. Daphne's choice becomes a touchstone for characters who seek freedom, who recognize their self-worth and protect it, even at great cost. Her transformation is often a narrative of inner strength, a reminder that the spirit can thrive when allowed its own space, a timeless story of choosing oneself. The myth of Apollo and Daphne, with its powerful themes of passion, choice, and the quest for peace, lives on in ways that resonate across time. For a world that grapples with the need for connection while valuing personal boundaries, their story is as relevant as ever. Daphne's transformation and Apollo's reverence continue to speak, offering both a tribute to undying love and a powerful reminder that the truest love respects and honors the soul's need for freedom. In the timeless story of Apollo and Daphne, love and loss are woven together in a tapestry that captures the fragility and strength of the human heart. From the first moment Apollo's eyes fall on Daphne, his soul is overwhelmed by a force he can't contain, a love so consuming that it becomes both a gift and a curse. For Daphne, this intense love is terrifying, forcing her to choose between her freedom and the possibility of losing herself. Here lies the profound tension between longing and autonomy, between the pull of love and the price it sometimes demands. Apollo's love, fierce and urgent, reflects a side of love that many have felt but rarely voiced, the kind that leaves you breathless, that blinds you to everything but the object of your affection. It's a love that aches, that fears rejection, that cannot rest until it finds completion. For Apollo, it's a yearning to be understood, to be connected in a way that transcends the ordinary. But in his pursuit of Daphne, this love grows frantic and desperate, unaware that his very chase drives her further away. In those moments, we see a longing for closeness that is universal, yet so often out of reach. Daphne's response captures the other side of love, the side that sees freedom as the essence of identity. For her, love threatens to eclipse the things she holds most dear. She does not wish to be taken, possessed, or pursued. She longs for peace, for her own life unbound by anyone else's desires. Daphne's fear is real and raw, and in her plea to the gods, she begs for escape over surrender. Her decision speaks to anyone who has ever feared being swallowed by love or losing their voice in the echo of someone else's affection. It reminds us that love, when it is all-consuming, can feel less like a gift and more like a prison. When Daphne calls on her father, the river god, for help, we feel the weight of her despair and her fierce need for liberation. Her choice to leave behind her human form is not just a rejection of Apollo's love, it's a sacrifice of everything familiar for the sake of peace. As she transforms, her last moments as a woman hold a deep sadness, the kind that anyone who has had to make a painful choice knows well. It's the sorrow of leaving, of saying goodbye to possibility, to what might have been, and to any chance of feeling a love that does not threaten her freedom. Daphne's loss, then, is not just of Apollo but of any chance for a love that would not demand her entire self. Apollo's loss is different, but no less heartbreaking. When he reaches out and realizes that Daphne has transformed, his grief is almost unbearable. In a single moment, his dreams, his yearning, everything he thought he could hold slips away. All he has left are memories of what he felt, the intensity that burned inside him, and the knowledge that he could never make her stay. This pain is familiar to anyone who has loved someone they couldn't keep, who has watched love turn into a memory without ever fully understanding why it slipped away. And yet, within this painful goodbye lies the beauty of loss itself. In that final moment, as Apollo touches the laurel tree that Daphne has become, he makes a vow that her spirit will live on. He promises to honor her forever, making the laurel a symbol of undying respect and reverence. In this gesture, Apollo's love transforms, becoming gentler, more profound. It is no longer a chase, but a quiet devotion, a recognition of the dignity in letting go. This love, softened by grief, holds a lesson on accepting loss, of transforming passion into reverence and longing into memory. The story of Apollo and Daphne echoes through the ages because it touches on something universal. It tells us that love is both beautiful and perilous, that it has the power to elevate and to consume. It shows us that love can give life meaning but also leave scars that may never fully heal. Daphne's transformation reminds us that sometimes, to keep our truest selves intact, we have to choose solitude, even at great personal cost. And Apollo's grief reminds us that to love deeply is also to be vulnerable to loss. In this myth, the interplay of love and loss reflects the bittersweet reality of human connections. Love, when it is pure, seeks to honor and protect, but when it overreaches, it risks causing pain, even to the one it cherishes most. And loss, though it feels like an ending, can sometimes be the beginning of a new understanding, a way to love someone in a different form, as Apollo loved Daphne even in her absence. Through the laurel, he finds a way to carry her memory with him, to turn his sorrow into a lasting tribute, showing us that while love may fade from sight, it never truly disappears. The themes of love and loss in this story resonate because they mirror what so many of us feel and fear. Love offers a chance to connect deeply, to share a piece of ourselves that no one else can touch. But it also brings the risk of heartache, of watching that connection break or transform in ways we never expected. Loss, in turn, brings grief, but also the wisdom to cherish those we love while we can and to find beauty in the memories they leave behind. For many, the myth of Apollo and Daphne serves as a reminder of love's complex beauty and the courage it takes to face loss. It speaks to anyone who has ever loved without guarantee, who has held on even knowing they might have to let go. Daphne's transformation and Apollo's enduring devotion show that love, even when it doesn't end as we hope, can become a part of something larger. It can inspire, it can teach, and it can remind us that every feeling, no matter how fleeting, holds value. In the end, Apollo and Daphne's story is not just about a god and a nymph, it's a mirror reflecting our own hearts. It tells us that love, while powerful, is not always meant to be captured. Sometimes, the greatest love we can give is to let go, to respect another's freedom, and to cherish the memory of a love that, even in its loss, will remain as evergreen as the laurel tree. There is something about the natural world that feels like it holds endless secrets. A mountain, a river, or even a single tree can whisper stories older than anyone can remember. In mythology, transformations often happen in nature, as if nature itself has the power to heal, to shelter, or to save. When Daphne, in her desperate moment, transforms into a laurel tree, it's more than a change of form, it's a moment of safety and peace, a return to a place she belongs. Transformation is one of the oldest stories that nature tells. From a bud bursting into blossom to a caterpillar's journey to a butterfly, the world around us is in constant change, moving with a rhythm so natural that we sometimes forget to marvel at it. In mythology, this transformation has a different power, often linked to fate or the gods, giving those changes an almost sacred quality. It is as if these stories are telling us that nature understands our struggles, our fears, and our dreams better than we realize. When humans and myths transform, they find a new form, but also something deeper: freedom, protection, and sometimes even love. For Daphne, the transformation into a tree was both an end and a beginning. In her plea to the gods, she sought refuge, an escape from the relentless pursuit of Apollo. The transformation was her answer. Her legs, swift and light moments before, became rooted into the soil, and her arms reached upward, stretching into branches, embracing the sky. The tree, in this moment, is a symbol of peace, of quiet endurance. It is a reminder that sometimes strength isn't in speed or in action, but in stillness. The laurel, forever green, speaks of Daphne's unyielding spirit and of her need to be free from what she could not bear. In many myths, transformation into natural elements, trees, rivers, stars, is a final refuge, a way for a soul to find safety when no other escape is possible. Nature, in these stories, becomes a place of belonging, a safe harbor for souls too tender, too full of spirit, to exist in the world as it is. It's as if nature is reaching out, offering a sanctuary that even the gods cannot touch. It tells us that there is something in nature that heals and understands, something ancient that knows how to protect. Daphne's transformation has echoes in other myths where people find their new form in the natural world. Myths are filled with stories of people who became trees, rivers, birds, each change carrying a message that goes beyond words. It's as if the transformation is a way to remain alive, to hold on to something essential even as they leave behind their human form. These tales tell us that nature does not forget, it keeps memories, it holds stories, and it gives new shapes to old spirits. In becoming part of nature, the transformed characters find a new life, one that does not need words or explanations. They become part of the world's beauty, part of its song. The connection between transformation and nature in mythology is also a reminder of the delicate balance between human life and the world around us. The natural world, with all its mysteries, isn't separate from us, it's intertwined with every part of our being. When people in myths turn to nature for escape or protection, they are embracing a part of themselves that resonates with the land, the rivers, the mountains. Nature does not judge, it accepts. Daphne's transformation into the laurel was a testament to this bond, to the idea that when words and actions fail, nature will always remain a silent witness and a refuge. This idea of transformation also speaks to something deeper in the human heart, a longing to be understood, to be seen and valued, even when we feel at our most fragile. In her final plea, Daphne did not choose to disappear, she chose to change, to find a form where she could be both hidden and present. The laurel was her shield, her new voice, speaking softly in the rustling leaves, echoing her story for generations to come. Through this transformation, Daphne reminds us that our most authentic selves may find refuge in nature, that it can hold the things we cannot carry on our own. In myths, these transformations can feel almost like a blessing. To become part of the natural world is to become something timeless, to live on in a way that human life alone cannot. It is a release from the constraints of mortality, a way to continue on, not as a memory but as a living, breathing part of the earth itself. Nature gives, protects, and in the case of Daphne, it also grants her wish for freedom, forever anchoring her spirit in a form that cannot be harmed or chased. The transformation is as much a gift as it is a farewell, as much a beginning as it is an ending. Nature, in its quiet and powerful way, teaches us through these myths that change is a part of life, that sometimes we must let go of one form to find peace in another. The transformation of Daphne into the laurel tree captures this lesson beautifully. She doesn't lose herself, she becomes something new, something strong, rooted, and eternal. The laurel, standing tall and green, speaks to those who pass by, sharing a story of resilience, of quiet strength, of a soul that chose to remain true to itself even when forced to change. And so, the myth of Daphne and her transformation is a story of nature's ability to heal and hold. It reminds us that when life becomes overwhelming, when we feel lost or pursued by forces beyond our control, there is a part of us that can always find solace in nature. Nature, in its silent and enduring way, is the guardian of stories, the keeper of lives that choose to transform. Through the myth of Daphne, we are reminded that transformation isn't just about change, it's about finding a place where we can be who we are, free and at peace. There's something timeless about myths. They've survived wars, empires, ages of growth, and ages of loss. Mythology finds its way through the cracks of history, slipping quietly into art, music, literature, and language. Myths are more than stories, they're memories, values, and symbols that speak from one heart to another across centuries, tying together human beings who may never meet but share a deep connection through these ancient tales. For cultures around the world, myths are like invisible threads, binding the past to the present, weaving shared identities and a sense of place in the world. These stories tell us who we are, even if they're thousands of years old, even if they're tales of gods, monsters, or magical transformations. Myths reach into the core of what it means to be human, our fears, our hopes, our longing for something beyond the ordinary. They provide not just lessons, but also a sense of belonging, of seeing ourselves reflected in something larger than life. One of the most powerful aspects of myths is their ability to connect the everyday with the divine. Ancient Greeks, for example, looked at a thunderstorm and felt the presence of Zeus. They saw the waves crashing and heard Poseidon's anger. Myths brought meaning to the unknown, a sense of connection to forces that couldn't be controlled but could be respected, revered. And in that reverence, people found comfort and strength, a way to face the unpredictability of life. Artists, poets, and thinkers across the ages have drawn from myths because they offer not only powerful images but also powerful emotions. The story of Daphne and Apollo, for instance, touches on themes of desire, transformation, and freedom, ideas that have a place in every age. From Renaissance paintings to modern literature, the story of Daphne, her transformation, and Apollo's unrequited love have inspired countless works, each artist adding their voice to the chorus of myth. And through each retelling, each reinterpretation, the myth lives on, not frozen in time but alive, breathing, evolving. Myths, with their symbols and meanings, become a part of everyday language, sometimes in ways we don't even notice. When we speak of someone having the Midas touch, or call a romantic chase a game of cat and mouse, we're tapping into the legacy of myth. These expressions have embedded themselves in how we communicate, subtly reminding us of their stories and values. They're like echoes from the past, quietly whispering through our words. In literature, myths create bridges between cultures. Shakespeare found inspiration in Greek and Roman myths. Dante's Inferno drew heavily from ancient tales. Modern authors like Neil Gaiman and Margaret Atwood continue to reinterpret these legends, making them relevant to today's world. Myths offer writers a way to explore universal human experiences. The themes of love, loss, power, and change are as meaningful now as they were thousands of years ago, and myths give a framework, a language, for these experiences. But the impact of myths goes beyond stories and language. They influence beliefs and values. Myths carry lessons about bravery, loyalty, wisdom, and respect for the natural world. In cultures around the world, stories of tricksters and heroes, gods and mortals, have shaped moral frameworks, teaching people about right and wrong, kindness and cruelty, love and betrayal. Even today, these tales are told to children, not just as entertainment but as guidance, a way of passing down lessons from one generation to the next. Through art, mythology finds a unique kind of immortality. Artists take these stories and give them new forms, capturing the emotions and struggles that make myths so unforgettable. The Laocoon sculpture, Botticelli's Birth of Venus, and even Picasso's Minotaur series show how artists have found endless inspiration in myths. They're not just recreating stories, they're interpreting them, finding their own meanings, and sharing their own insights with the world. Art allows myths to grow, to shift in meaning, to adapt to each new age. In today's world, mythology continues to inspire. Movies, comics, and even video games find richness in these old tales, reinventing them for modern audiences. The Marvel Universe, with its pantheon of gods and heroes, is just one example of how mythology shapes popular culture. These stories, retold in fresh, exciting ways, reach audiences across the globe, showing that myths are as relevant as ever. They offer a way to escape into worlds where anything is possible, but they also remind us of the challenges, emotions, and struggles that define human life. For many, myths also provide a sense of connection to the natural world. Stories of nymphs, spirits, and gods that live in rivers, trees, and mountains remind us that we are part of the earth, that there's a magic in the world around us. Myths teach respect for nature, seeing it as alive and filled with meaning. This connection, especially in today's world, feels more urgent, reminding us of the responsibility we have to protect the planet and honor its beauty. Through myths, we understand our ancestors and the things they valued, the things they feared. These stories offer a window into the minds and hearts of people from different times and places, showing us that while our lives may look different, our hearts beat with the same longings. Myths make us feel that we are not alone in our struggles, that others before us have faced similar joys and sorrows. They're a comforting presence, a reminder of the resilience and beauty of the human spirit. So myths live on, not as relics of the past, but as vibrant pieces of who we are today. They remind us of the magic in everyday life, the hidden depths in the world around us, and the endless possibilities within us. Whether through art, literature, or simply a tale shared by word of mouth, myths continue to shape our world, carrying with them the wisdom, love, and courage of those who first told them. They are not just stories, they are legacies, echoes of the human soul. There's something haunting about the story of Apollo and Daphne, a god's passion that burns so fiercely it drives him to chase a love that cannot be his, and a nymph's desperate longing for freedom so powerful it transforms her entire being. The myth isn't just about a chase through the woods, it's about the yearning in all of us for something just out of reach, the ways we change ourselves to protect what we hold dear, and the choices we make in our hearts when love and freedom collide. Through the story, we can find reflections of our own lives and insights for the challenges we face in our relationships and personal growth. From Apollo, we see the pain of desire that grows stronger the further it stretches, a lesson that reminds us to examine what it is we're reaching for in others. Apollo sees Daphne's beauty and grace, and he's overtaken by a passion that feels like destiny. Yet, in his pursuit, he overlooks Daphne's own desires, her fear, her plea to be left in peace. We're reminded here that love isn't about possessing someone, it's about understanding them. True affection means seeing someone not as a prize, but as a person with their own dreams and fears. In modern relationships, this resonates deeply. To love someone is to honor their boundaries, their freedom, and the essence of who they are. And then there's Daphne. Her choice to transform rather than surrender her independence is a powerful image of self-preservation and sacrifice. In Daphne's determination to stay true to herself, we learn the value of agency. Daphne's decision to ask her father, the river god, to turn her into a laurel tree rather than submit to a love she does not want is heartbreaking and beautiful. She would rather lose her form than lose her freedom, and this teaches us something important about the lengths we might go to protect our sense of self. It encourages us to be willing to make sacrifices for what feels true to us, to honor ourselves even when it's difficult. So often, relationships challenge our boundaries, and Daphne's story shows that these boundaries matter. Love is not meant to consume us entirely or take away our essence. Instead, it should allow us to become even more of who we are, as Daphne's transformation leads her to become something enduring, a symbol of resilience and beauty. She becomes a laurel tree, one that remains forever alive and growing, symbolizing her enduring strength and integrity. Daphne teaches us that love shouldn't mean losing ourselves, rather, it's about finding the strength to hold on to what makes us whole. In Apollo's grief and admiration for Daphne even after she becomes a laurel tree, there's a bittersweet realization about unrequited love and the acceptance that sometimes what we want isn't meant to be ours. He respects her final form and honors her by making the laurel a sacred symbol, a gesture of reverence for what he cannot have. In life, this speaks to the grace of letting go, of cherishing people even when they choose a path that doesn't include us. The myth tells us that love does not have to end in possession to be real, that there is a beauty in honoring someone's choices, even when those choices take them away from us. The story also reminds us of the importance of understanding our own motivations. Apollo is struck by a desire so intense that he loses sight of everything else, and it's only when Daphne is gone that he truly understands the depth of his feelings. Sometimes in life, our own feelings can mislead us, drive us to want things that may not be right or even possible. Apollo's pursuit is a reminder to look within ourselves and question what we truly seek in others. Do we desire someone because we genuinely understand them, or are we chasing an ideal we've placed upon them? Love asks us to be honest about our own intentions, to ensure that what we feel is grounded in truth rather than fantasy. The myth of Apollo and Daphne speaks, too, to the concept of transformation, not just in the literal sense, but in the way love and relationships change us. Sometimes, the people we meet shape us in ways we don't expect, and the experiences we share with them lead us to transform parts of ourselves. Like Daphne, who becomes something entirely new yet beautiful, we, too, can grow and change through the connections we make. Every relationship, whether it lasts or fades, leaves its mark on us, helping us grow, sometimes giving us strength, other times teaching us what we need to let go. In relationships, we also learn about balance. Apollo's relentless chase shows us what happens when passion and desire go unchecked, while Daphne's need for freedom reminds us that boundaries are not walls, they're guides. Daphne's transformation into a tree is a physical boundary that Apollo can no longer cross, and this speaks to the importance of having a foundation strong enough to withstand even the strongest of storms. True love, this story seems to say, is found in the space between, where desire and freedom can exist together without overpowering each other. For personal growth, the myth inspires us to look at what we value most about ourselves and what lengths we're willing to go to protect that. Daphne's choice reflects a deep self-knowledge and commitment to her own peace and autonomy. In a world that often pressures us to conform, to yield, or to give in, Daphne's story empowers us to hold fast to who we are. Growth isn't about giving up what's dear to us, it's about becoming even more resilient, finding strength in transformation, and letting go of what doesn't serve us. This myth lingers in our hearts because it speaks to the most fundamental aspects of love, identity, and self-respect. It tells us that love is not about possession or control, it's about admiration, respect, and the courage to let go when needed. Daphne's sacrifice and Apollo's grief remind us that love and freedom are sometimes at odds, yet both are essential. It's possible to love deeply and still respect someone's independence, to let go while still carrying that love within us. Love doesn't always have to end in being together. Sometimes, the truest love is letting someone be who they need to be, even if it means watching from afar. In the end, the myth of Apollo and Daphne is a story of resilience and choice, of understanding when to pursue and when to release. It reminds us that true love honors the other's freedom and recognizes when a boundary must be respected. And in our own lives, we can draw strength from Daphne's courage and Apollo's acceptance, letting these lessons guide us as we navigate our own paths, in love and in life. Transformation, it's one of life's greatest mysteries, carrying us from one state to another, often beyond our own understanding. There's an unspoken power in every transformation, in every moment when we choose to change or when change chooses us. Daphne's transformation into the laurel tree was more than a physical change, it was a transformation of her soul, of her purpose. In that single choice to become something rooted, unbreakable, and forever a part of the earth, she found a strength that even Apollo's love could not reach. It's a reminder of how we, too, find power in embracing the transformations that life brings, even those we may not have chosen. In Daphne's choice, there is a moment of pure, raw courage. Feeling the intensity of Apollo's pursuit and knowing that escape was impossible, she chose a form that could not be chased. Her transformation was an act of reclaiming her own spirit, her own identity, even if it meant letting go of the life she once knew. There is something profoundly moving about Daphne's decision, as it shows us that sometimes, letting go of the life we once dreamed of is the very act that allows us to become truly free. In her transformation, she found the deepest expression of herself, rooted yet unyielding, as though to say, "I am more than you can reach. I am what I choose to be." There's a haunting beauty in the way she becomes the laurel tree. Her branches and leaves become an eternal symbol of resilience, of finding peace within oneself, no matter how intense the outside pressures may be. This transformation isn't about escape, it's about finding a strength that only she could give herself. Daphne's change was a testament to her spirit, to the resilience that we all hold deep within. In a way, her story whispers to each of us that even when the world feels overwhelming, even when we're pushed to the limits, there is something within that can choose, that can endure, that can stand tall in the face of all that seeks to shake us. Apollo, too, changes through this. In Daphne's transformation, he's forced to confront his own desire and to understand the depth of his feelings. He learns that true admiration does not conquer, it respects. Apollo's pursuit ends not in possession, but in acceptance, and honoring Daphne's choice and her legacy. In life, love often transforms us in ways we never anticipated. Sometimes, the transformation is painful, leaving us to pick up the pieces of a dream that cannot be, but through this, we grow. Apollo's grief is a reminder that not every desire is meant to be fulfilled, that some loves leave a mark not by their presence but by their absence, their forever unattainable nature. The power of transformation extends beyond physical change. It is in the ways our hearts, minds, and spirits are shaped by the paths we walk, the love we experience, and the losses we bear. In mythology, transformation often marks a turning point, a moment when a character steps into something greater, shedding the old to embrace a new, often unexpected form. Daphne's transformation into the laurel wasn't just her escape, it was her declaration of self. She may have lost her voice, her mobility, her life as she knew it, but she gained a place in the world that was unassailable, untouchable, forever hers. And so, the story lingers with us because we, too, face these moments when transformation feels like a loss, when change feels like a giving up of who we were. Yet, as Daphne shows, it is in these very moments that we find our truest strength. Change is a difficult, often painful journey, but through it, we come closer to our own essence. In Daphne's branches, in her silent leaves, we see the power of standing firm in who we are, of refusing to be reshaped by forces outside of ourselves. She became something beautiful and eternal, not in spite of her transformation, but because of it. Life is a series of transformations, some chosen, some thrust upon us. We are shaped by love, by loss, by the passing of time and the dreams that flicker within us. Sometimes, like Daphne, we must make a choice to change, to step into a form that honors who we truly are. And other times, we are like Apollo, left with nothing but the memories of what could have been, learning to accept, to let go, and to find meaning in what remains. In the end, Daphne's story is not just about a single transformation, but about the transformative power that lies in all of us, the strength to choose our path, to stand by our values, and to find peace in the forms we take. The laurel tree becomes a symbol of endurance, of resilience, of the quiet, unbreakable spirit within. Daphne became more than she ever was, not by escaping, but by embracing a form that allowed her spirit to live on forever. Her transformation was an act of self-respect, of strength, and a quiet triumph that reminds us that sometimes, letting go is the most powerful act of all. And so, when we think of transformation, of what it means to truly change, Daphne's story serves as a timeless reminder. She shows us that change is not a surrender, it is a reclamation. It is in these transformations that we find our power, an unyielding, undying strength that, like the laurel, stands tall and beautiful, rooted in the ground, yet reaching for the sky.